746, the number of candidates with minimum university entry qualifications of a C plus and above, and then 30,000, the number of candidates in the sub-county school who qualified for university admission. So, I mean, the disparity is quite wide in terms of those who qualified and the spaces that are available.
Remember, the media, and of course our, should you say, education sector keep hyping this absolute need for people to consider success or to peg success to university entry. Because if you look at this, counties with few schools have even less varsity slots. That sort of headline is the sort of thing that must be discouraged completely.
I agree.
Because it places this heavy burden on students who don't qualify for university. The statement you're making is, if you don't qualify for university, you failed. You haven't. You haven't.
I was speaking to a young man last evening. So this boy has taken quite a number of years in school. He's past the age of 20. He was sitting his KCSE last year, and he had his hopes pretty high. In fact, he was saying the way this exam came, I was so sure that I was at least going to get the C plus. He got a D. And he is completely devastated. So devastated. And, he's feeling, I have failed. And this is the kind of, narrative that we are actually churning out, because you didn't get C plus and above, you have failed.
Whereas he has options.
And we're basically saying 80% of people who sit for KCSE fail? No way.
Look, there's, alongside that title, no single A in Taita Taveta. They're in the entire county. Now, there's going to be a bit of a dust storm over this.
Of course.
They're going to ask, you are telling us that the entire county could not produce one A.
One A, yeah. So what have you been doing?
Well,
and let's review.
If you actually, there is a review process for these things. If you're unhappy with your results, you can always ask for the papers to be remarked at a cost, of course. But you can.
You can.
It's
an avenue that's open.
It's open.
Good thing about that, though.
No, it's a recourse that is important. But if you look at the paper, do you know it's just full of exam? Just turn the pages.
It's exam, results.
The first half of the standard.
And it's about excellence, all right?
Yes.
And excellence here we are measuring by
University.
It's the A's and the B's. In fact, even the C's are not as many. We are talking about the A's and the B's. If you look at all the stories, A's, B's, they got A, they got B's, they got A's and B's.
Something.
Even those that got C's and D's.
They could very well be a correct indication of how the students did. However, the way it's being highlighted, this definitely makes for problems. It does. Can you imagine the parents whose children got C's? The C's that don't qualify you for university.
Yep.
What do you think those parents are thinking and feeling? Because every parent is geared to think a child must go to the university.
They're devastated.
It's devastating for them, exactly. I mean, you can imagine what they did in terms of an investment, and whether that was a monetary investment or mental investment, kind of psychological investment, that they felt that their children were going to reach a certain level. And then this is what you're met with. Definitely, it's not something, just as parents, and then also then having to bear the emotional responsibility that comes with a child being disappointed. So, I mean... And then amongst your peers, because we must understand, parents, how did your child perform?
Yes.
And then, my child got an A, my child is being called, will go to this particular university. So it's not easy.
In fact, we're inviting you for a party this weekend because
there you go.
My child really performed so well.
Exactly.
And yet your neighbor is feeling, oh my God.
Right. Someone in your circles. Yeah, exactly.
It's really disheartening. One of the things that... of course, some of the steps that had been taken by the Ministry of Education, including that thing of not ranking schools, was to reduce this pressure. The other one of also not saying who has gotten what marks. In fact, for a number of years, the Education CS was not saying who got an A. It was just saying this, the number of A's that we had, these are the number of B's. Of course, we in the media would now go out and fish for the A's.
And see who got them.
Exactly. That's the story. The story would be, okay, so Kaimenyi has given us the number of A's. We know, of course, if you go to Alliance, you're going to get the number of A's in Alliance. Go to Starehe, get the number of A's. Go to Mangu, go to the other schools. You'll be able to judge how many A's we have.
Something interesting, looking regionally. The Rwandan government has evacuated close to 6,000 residents from high-risk zones in different parts of the country, threatened by heavy rains in the first 3 weeks of December.
The government has evacuated.
Before the rain came.
Go ahead, read.
Right? Some 4,000 of them are staying with their relatives, so plans were made in advance. 1,500 living in government-rented houses, while 300 in temporarily sheltered in schools. According to the Minister of Local Government, Anastasia Shaka, she told a press conference in the evacuation on Wednesday, floods and landslides caused by heavy rains this year have affected 22 national roads and 42 district roads and bridges. According to the Minister of Agriculture, Clava Gatete, official data showed extreme weather caused some 250 deaths last year. And they decided that this year, with this information, they didn't want it to happen.
When are they expecting the rains to fall?
The rains have started
They've
falling.
already started falling.
But the people have been moved, and that evacuation has taken place as they wait for the rains to subside, so that in the event that the landslides happen, the people will not be affected.
Taken to government-rented houses.
So can it be done?
No, it can't be done.
It can't.
No,
eh?
no, no, no.
No.
In Kenya?
No, that's what I'm saying. In Kenya, no.
No.
That's an
Where are the Red
example.
Cross?
We have the Red Cross. And
Where are the World Food Program?
Good grief. It can be done, man.
The situation can be contained.
Poof.
We said that repeatedly, that it can be.
Yes.
But again, the Kenyan trait of treating problems with words. You have a flood, people are talking about it.
There you go. And talking around it
You ask
on
about
top
logistics, you're given more words.
Yep.
All right? Sometimes I don't envy the government spokesman. Because you have to report the things that you know are happening, and you cannot report it in a way that puts the government in an adverse position.
of it. No, you
Yes.
can't.
And yet the government was and still is in an extremely adverse position when it came to the floods.
You can't make them look bad, even though they
No. Even if you try to make them look good, that's really the situation. It is difficult to make
Yes.
them look good. Because
Yeah.
looking good here is handling the situation, making
Yeah.
sure that it is clear that, yes, there's a problem, but it's being sorted out. And it's not even the floods. For us to understand the floods, we need to understand the ferry.
Yeah.
So it was staring at us and we're saying, words were directed at the ferry.
Oh,
At the
yes.
ferry, yeah.
Okay? It's gone quiet. Whether new ferries have been bought, whether quiet.
Nothing.
And then, did a building not collapse?
A building collapsed. Yes, it did. Well, if you want to go before that, a school collapsed. And then
Yes.
2 months later, a building collapsed.
What is also inherent and what is true, and the media has reported this, that the ministry that is supposed to be charged, again, I mean the word supposed to be charged with ensuring that faulty buildings are either brought down or condemned, have reported, they've even given a list of the buildings in the country that are defective and should not be inhabited.
Yeah.
And do you think anything has taken place beyond that?
No. Yeah. And here, a little neighbor who's able to do this just by, planning ahead. Well, here's a warning that there's a desert locust invasion that would happen in the Horn of Africa. According to the UN, according to FAO, which is the Food and Agriculture Organization, has warned that a dangerous desert locust situation is developing across the Horn of Africa amid continuing locust breeding in eastern Ethiopia and adjacent areas of Somalia. So that's coming, and it'll probably touch on this area as rains fell over a large portion of Ogaden and Somalia from Cyclone Pawan. Many swarms are expected to remain in place for another generation of breeding that could cause a substantial and dramatic increase in locusts. Of course, you know what happens with locusts is they come and they basically
eat everything
take care
in sight.
of everything in sight in a swarm. So
all the vegetation that will have grown out of this current rain
it's going.
is going.
Well, there's a warning.
And of course, there's not going to be food because floods have, of course, affected a lot of farming land.
Yes.
This is devastating. If it ain't one thing,
It's another.
It's another. 19 minutes past 6 o'clock. Good morning. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Broadcasting from Nairobi to Mombasa, Nakuru, Kisumu, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi. Live streaming on Facebook, Spice FM KE. Our website, www.spicefm.co.ke. Join the conversation on Twitter, @SpiceFMKE. And the hashtag is the Situation Room.
The Kenyan summer is right around the corner, and Blankets and Wine is here to celebrate it with not one, but 2 editions. Join us on December 22nd and toast to the year that was with reggae phenomenon Coffee, South African house finest Sunel, Kenyan sensations Fena, Soul Generation, and many more. Then start the new year with our big vibe on January 5th with Grammy-nominated superstar Goldlink, Kenya's finest Blinky Bill, Karun, and lots more artists. Season pass is at $3,500 and advance tickets at $3,000 per show. Available on blanketsandwine.com. Both events at Ngong Racecourse from noon onwards. In partnership with Timeless Events and Occasions, Parapet Cleaning, Kenya Association of Manufacturers, Securix, the Nairobi Flea Market, Boomplay, and Vibes Radio. Link up and toast with us.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
It's 21 minutes after 6 o'clock. Good morning. This is The Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation. Remember, we're live streaming on Facebook on Spice FM KE. We are on YouTube. Spice FM KE is our channel, and www.spicefm.co.ke. So we saw what happened yesterday, Ndu.
Yes, we did. And so we saw, obviously, the motion for impeachment went through at the county assembly. And Governor Waitito of Kiambu was impeached, and of course with an overwhelming majority, in terms of more than 2/3 of those present voted for his impeachment, well, I think with one that was against the motion. So in this case, they said, yes, now go before the Senate and let's see whether the Senate will convict and basically ask you to leave office, or if they will acquit you of these charges. And I think several things have come into play here. Of course, again, the abuse of office is one thing that is holding in terms of the charges, and also another thing is then misappropriation of a position whereby family members then were given these plush opportunities when it came to tenders, and their companies then given the mandate, or rather being given the opportunities to do business within the county. And this should not have been the case from the county boss. Now, of course, we had one other famous impeachment that happened yesterday coming out of the United States, but here we have something in Kenya as well. And I guess at the end of the day, it's left up to the hands of the Senate. But this morning, I want to say that, I think here we look at a different a case when it comes to the Senate. I don't think the Senate is looking to and I say this figuratively, not looking to impeach or not looking to convict or acquit Waitito, but looking to make a statement about their position and where they stand in terms of how government business should be done. I think there have been many calls over time, over the last couple of months, couple of weeks, whereby I think the Senate wanted to stand in a position of integrity and authenticity. And I think this is a litmus test for them then in terms of what they're going to be able to do. Of course, many things have been said. Is he embattled? This governor, absolutely. I think he's gone through quite the puddle of drama over the last few weeks. But I think here what serves is a test that the Senate is going to have to pass through to show us whether they're serious about their jobs or not.
It's a really good point you raised today, because of course Senate has been accused of actually just duplicating MPs' positions in terms of their oversight role. So this is really an opportunity for them to show us that they do have a role to play in our governance system. Of course, what else comes up is the conflict of interest. It's a brilliant opportunity for us to gauge how this works, because we haven't had a situation like this before. If you remember, we had two senators, quite senior senators, so wanting to represent a governor in a criminal case.
Right.
Now you can see how that would sort of interfere or be at conflict with their role in something like this. So it's an interesting one. I think it will give us a lot of precedence in terms of what to follow from here on. And yes, I actually agree with you totally that the Senate will want to flex some muscle and show us who they are. You do forget about senators. I do. I'm interested in governance. But unless one has done something and it's in the news, I generally tend not to feature them or bring them into the equation when I'm looking at the governance system. So it's a good opportunity for them to show us that they do indeed have a role to play, because there has been discussions to actually scrap that position as well. Yeah, interesting.
The talk now is whether to actually scrap the position or to elevate them and make them clearly the upper house.
Yeah.
They've had this kind of opportunity before. When, of course, Governor Wambora's impeachment came before them.
It wasn't once, you know.
Yeah, not once. And when the issue of Taita Taveta came before them just the other day. And I think the kind of muscle that they flex is showing that they can overrule the county assembly.
Right.
That's what we've seen them do before. You know, coming up and saying, no, the county assembly, whatever you guys have done, it was unprocedural, and the governor, your governor should stay in place because he was elected by the people. Of course, sometimes people also have argued that because some of these senators are looking to becoming governors, so they want to ensure that they set a precedent where governors are protected by Senate.
Or some want to take them out. We saw some comments coming from Sakaja, where he said, you know, if the governor does come out, Sonko that is, he'd be more than happy to run for that position. So he has a vested interest in ensuring that Sonko comes out, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Another conflict of interest situation, perhaps, maybe senators or sitting senators shouldn't be allowed to run for governor if they're part of the impeachment process or if they're part of the conviction process to remove him out of office.
In terms of solidarity from one government official to another, I think sometimes we see that. We saw senators, like we said, come out and support two senators, and I think quite influential ones when we look at Murkomen and Mutula Jr. It was clear that where their solidarity lay, and it is clear because of the fact that they are standing by as friends in terms of representation for the embattled governor of Nairobi. However, with this Waitito case, I don't think we are looking at solidarity again. I think now, yes, because if we want to look, it's not a matter of is he guilty or not, should he come or go, but say, look, we've been, it's been thrown at us before that, you know, we're really not serious or that we are really not that powerful. But here, the power lays in your hands to either take this guy out or not. And we also must remember that at one point, Waitito was asking for a plea bargain, as it were. He said, okay, can we sit down and talk? Was that an admission of guilt? Was that an admission of, okay, maybe I made a mistake and then maybe I'm looking for a way out? So I think all of these things will be taken into consideration when this will go to vote. I don't know exactly when. We're probably looking in the next couple of months for this to happen, after the new year, of course. But to remove a sitting governor on these charges of corruption that we see is not something that should or probably will not be taken lightly. And it probably is the blood that Kenyans have been baying for over time. And until Kenyans see that something like this can actually happen before their eyes, I think that now gives the confidence boost that people are looking for, would be looking for, to say
It's
that,
not
okay.
going to happen.
Yeah, you think he's not going to be convicted?
Nothing.
Nothing.
The
It's
reason
not
I
going to
think
happen.
it will happen is in the backdrop of President Uhuru's comments on the last public holiday that we had, Madaraka Day, Jamhuri.
Jamhuri Day.
Jamhuri Day.
Yeah.
And he was quite stern and express about the fact that they shouldn't have private practices. This is state officers simultaneously, because there is that conflict of interest. So I think this is an opportunity for them to prove that there is no conflict of interest.
But did you see how the president was challenged on that very statement?
He was, and it's
By
that
the same
it's
senators.
that very rigor that is going to be driving them to ensure there's a conviction. So I think they will convict him. to prove that actually we are very independent. There is no conflict of interest. This is how we work. And then, of course, we'll have Sonko go through the same. And I believe he'll be convicted too.
There's a very serious self-serving interest that many senators would have. Politicians always aspire for a higher seat for them, which is the higher seat, that of the governor. If you were them and you are Kenyan, would you go about passing or setting a precedent that may harm you?
No
Should
way.
you pursue that particular position and actually get it? The answer is no, you would not.
So in this case, what we're looking at, even with government officials, is that, self-serving objectives trump.
Elected. These fellows are elected. Just so that we understand it. They're all elected. They're all gunning for that position.
I'm saying, are we saying that self-serving objectives trump the right way
Yes.
to do things?
Yes.
That
that's
is
clear. And
what
if
we
it's-
have seen
Yes.
so far.
Look at our politicians. Look at the decision-making process that we constantly discuss in this very, very room regarding our MPs. They're self-serving. If you look at the things that they seem to agree on unanimously, it's self-serving
Is
usually.
that not human nature, the selfish gene, to want to serve your interests first?
It is human, but we are contextualizing it into this political situation. And the discussion is, will the impeachment be carrying out to its logical expected conclusion? And I'm saying no. The likelihood of Ferdinand Waititu or whichever governor comes into being, because of the self-serving nature that politicians exhibit more than any other human being we know in this particular country, the likelihood is no, because many a senator will want to be governor. And they do not want to put themselves in a position when they are governor to be faced with such a thing and to actually stand a chance of actually genuinely losing their jobs. They are not going to do that.
Definitely one perspective. Of course, there is a self-serving element in ensuring that he is convicted to prove that they are independent and there's no conflict of interest. And I think in the
I think their
backdrop of the
proof for
statements-
independence is by actually going against the county assembly. Is that the county assembly can decide something, but we are the bosses.
How about
we are
going
the ones
against
who
the
decide.
executive?
Or even going against the executive.
Which in impeaching him or convicting him, they'd be doing.
Oh, maybe not. It's 28 minutes to 7 o'clock. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads.
Traffic.
Right, so all major universities have graduations today, from the Kenyatta University to the University of Nairobi. Everybody's graduating today, so this is going to affect traffic, and I think we have people already on the roads moving. So from Thika Road to right smack in the middle of the CBD, Museum Hill, Uhuru Highway, Wayaki Way, we're going to see extra traffic this morning. So probably this would have been the time to leave. Let's see what exactly the roads will look like in a short while, but for now, you know that it's going to be gridlock at some point, and this is going to be through the day, and we'll let you know what roads will be affected so that you can know which to use as alternates. Coming off Mombasa Road right now, not much of a problem. It's actually easy street all the way down to the Nyayo Stadium roundabout. Then looking into the city centre, we'll be able to have a clearer picture of that in a short while, but for now this is the time to be out so that you can get where you're going before the gridlock takes place. 0719-012-600. Give us a shout on Twitter so that we can see what's happening in your neck of the woods.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
There is, of course, also the question as to whether impeachment of Governor Waititu, or indeed even Trump himself, is undemocratic in nature. In that, does it overturn the will of the people? Does it overturn an election result? There is that question. Of course, it's 63 MCAs that voted to kick out Governor Ferdinand Waititu. But how many people do these 63 MPs, or rather MCAs, actually represent? Which, of course, underpinned, which also brings up the question of proportional representation. If these MCAs have very small wards in terms of population, how many people are they actually representing? And could they be a majority of the people who still want Governor Waititu in place? And so could this actually be democratic? There is that sentiment to consider.
But consider also, you mentioned the Americans. Their constitution, the very constitution, also lays it down very clearly. not just the impeachment process, but it's understood that the writers of this ensured that it was actually difficult to impeach, that it wasn't something that anybody could wake up in the morning and do. But that same constitution also allows the American people, of whom we have representatives, to actually remove. So impeachment is one of the tools that the constitution in America allows them to, but they even allow them to remove them forcibly. Their constitution.
Of course, we could argue that we were impeaching Trump or Waitito indeed for undermining democracy. I mean, the argument is a rabbit hole if you follow it through.
Waitito? Democracy?
For undermining democracy and not carrying out the will of the people and keeping his promises as he made in the campaign. And this could be considered also a soft coup.
This is what you call a mismanagement of that particular county. Yes.
It is undermining democracy because you make a promise to people, they vote for you on certain information.
And then you go against that.
But I think, in my opinion, the impeachment process maybe should have one extra layer whereby the people are involved. So as opposed to voting for a new governor, we could perhaps have an election as to whether the person should stay or not.
Like a referendum to impeach.
A referendum is to change the constitution, of course. So
We
this
can
is an
still call
election.
this-
No, a referendum is specifically to change or to make amendments to the constitution. This is an election in the same way they would then be electing a new governor after 60 days if there was no deputy to take over. You then have an election as to whether you should remove this guy or not, or perhaps create a mechanism where you need perhaps 2/3 signatures from each ward, or involve the people a little bit more. Remember, they brought him into office, they voted for him, just to remove the undemocratic element from impeachment. It's important to consider that this is the choice and the will of the people, whether or not he's committed a crime or he's perceived to commit a crime, whether or not it's in the constitution. Is it undemocratic?
So
that question still
what
stands.
you seem to be asking, if I understand you, is what roles then do the representatives of the people have? What is it that they cannot do in representing the people, and what can they do? Because I would assume that if the MCAs voted, they are representatives of the people. They are representing the people.
But did they go back to the people on this particular question? We don't know how.
I would assume they did.
I don't think so. We're not consulted even by our MPs, who are more visible in terms of, we watch parliamentary proceedings.
There's public participation.
We're not consulted. I watch a lot of debates where I haven't been consulted. I'm not saying me personally, but I haven't even seen that bill being discussed.
Do you know how it,
if there is public
works in Nyeri?
participation,
Do you know how it works usually? Leaders will hold meetings, hold barazas. Now, in case you didn't know, that's called public participation.
No, I'm aware of
And
that.
yes, so you may not have attended it, others may not have attended it, but you don't have to attend it for it to pass as public participation.
So by the time they went forth with this impeachment notion, if we're looking at the 63 MPs who took a vote, basically, we are meant to then assume that they did so with the will of the people now affecting their decision.
I'm going to respond by asking you a question. Have you heard the people of Kiambu demonstrating or kicking a fuss about the impeachment?
I don't think that region tends to.
Oh, they do.
Tend
They
to
do.
kick a fuss.
Throw
they
stones
kick a fuss.
and burn tires.
Well,
They
they
do.
do demonstrate.
They do demonstrate.
They do demonstrate.
They
Remember,
do.
they were demonstrating just the other day about security, where
Yes.
the interior CS had to go in. And I think, but I looking at it from those democratic tenets, I think once you've elected the members of the assembly, those members of the assembly, you've given them a mandate.
No. Of
to
course, I
check.
understand in terms
So
of the legal
when
framework.
when you say 2/3 of the people's representatives have voted, then that's a will of the people has been expressed by their leaders.
Now, this begs the question in that we need to see these MCAs that voted. What are the numbers in their wards? And this is where proportional representation comes in, because you could find that their wards are not as are not as densely populated as the ones who actually voted.
But do we know this?
No. I'm giving you an example. It's a hypothetical
It's a
situation
hypothetical one.
of how this could be undemocratic.
But
So
what's
you
the
could
likelihood
find.
that 2/3 of the MCAs who voted represent the minority?
It depends. They could come from the sparsely populated regions
Or
of
2/3 of them?
Oh, absolutely. What I'm giving you is a situation that is very possible and leads to an absurdity in as far as upholding the tenets of democracy. It can happen. It's a possibility, and we need to envisage this when we're creating a framework to impeach so that we don't undermine democracy. So my suggestion is perhaps to introduce another instrument whereby the populace gets involved again, perhaps through signatures, so that there is more involvement than just actual representation, because with this representation, it can be skewed.
Allow
And this
me
is
to
why
wade-
the
allow me
argument
to
for
wade in
proportional proportional
here.
representation
Allow me
comes
to wade
in.
here. Even with positions of MCs like MPs, the commission that deals with the boundaries and so forth, when you create wards,
It has factored in.
it has factored in these
population.
things. Exactly. And it isn't as though you're going to get this extremely massive disparity.
Yeah.
Not really.
No, the massive
Especially
disparity
in
does
a county
exist.
like
In a
Kiambu.
county, the likelihood of you finding that one ward
Yes,
has
I
to
know,
represent-
but the possibility of
represents
it
more than
happening
double.
is
No.
possible.
It is not possible.
It is possible.
For you to say so, you
From
need
a
to give an example,
From, no,
Jerry.
from a hypothetical situation, and for
Hypothetically-
the sake of debate, if we're going to look at democracy and scrutinize it, it is very possible for one ward to have 5,000 people and another ward to have 50,000 people. Now, if the MCA for that ward,
5,000 people in a ward.
yes, let's say.
I think this hypothesis,
Forget the
this
figures.
hypothesis
No.
is based solely.
Hypothetically,
it's
it
based
is very
solely
possible.
without the other factors coming into play. Now let's
Yes,
let's
no,
bring
and
in
it's
the reality.
important we consider
the
this
reality
argument.
is that the ward was created with that consideration in mind.
It does take
so that
it
ward
does
not
take
just
it into account to a certain extent, but we know places or constituencies.
Like?
Somewhere in Lamu, I think we heard. Who was it we had in the studio the other day? Who was
Mahiri
formerly
Zaja.
formerly part of the IEBC or a commissioner in the IEBC, and she talked about other considerations. So, for instance, marginalized communities in certain areas.
Yes.
So, imagine if it was in a region like that, or a region that is not the population is not evenly distributed. A constituency whereby some wards are more densely populated than others. So, what you find is one MCA is representing 50,000 people, and another MCA is representing 3,000 people. Now, I've given extremes for the sake of effect so that you can see what it is I'm trying to illustrate here. Now, what you would have is that MCA's vote to impeach is representing only 3,000 people, whereas the other MCA's not to impeach would be representing 50,000 people. So you do run the risk of undermining the will of the people in that sense. Now, the way to mitigate this
I'm
is to
saying-
introduce another instrument,
Yes,
such
but let's
as a
go back,
petition.
Jerry. You see, even in those considerations that Lillian was talking about, of other interests and all, and marginalization, the factor would not be at 100%. Really, you cannot. The likelihood of you creating more than one ward, even that would have,
As she says, one with 5,000, another with
and another one with
50,000.
50,000.
Hypothetically, it's very
That is
possible.
It is
stretching
not.
it
No,
completely.
it is
It
very
is
possible.
not, because
It is
that's the
completely
reason why
stretching
you
it.
have an exercise called the boundaries delimitation exercise. That's what you're doing. You're
And if
making
you
sure
look- if you look at the
you're making
boundaries
sure
and the
that
parameters-
the people who are represented in a certain ward also reflect. The
No,
people in
we
the
don't
entire
have
county.
proportional representation, and this is why there's
So you're
discussions
pushing the
about
agenda
it.
of proportional
No, I'm
representation.
not. I'm giving you an
The
example
proportional
of where it leads to an
representation in
absurdity.
voting, but the proportional representation in terms of the delimitation of the wards
No.
will of course have taken into
What
those
it is
considerations.
there's a lower
And-
limit.
and-
There's
and
a
there are
lower
certain
limit.
thresh-
But there's no upper limit.
But
There's a
then-
lower limit as to how small a population can be before it warrants it being a constituency to have an MP. There's no upper limit. So that disparity
The
is
upper
not
limit is the
negated.
total
It
population.
exists.
Yes.
Yes, but in terms of numbers, when they're creating these constituencies, there's a lower limit. So, for
Yes.
instance, they say
Cannot
you,
go
you cannot
below
go
a
below,
certain number,
but it doesn't
right.
mean it cannot go above. So, in terms of the
The
occurrence
above-
or the
but that
emergence
The
of
above
disparity
is set
not only
naturally
can-
by the number of people
Listen,
in that area. That is a
hypothetically,
natural
what I'm saying
ceiling.
is very possible.
And
As a
it is
result,
not
And
possible,
hypothetically,
Jerry.
as a
what you're
result, it
saying
must
is
be
actually
considered
improbable.
in debate.
It is
no,
not
it is
possible,
not.
Jerry.
I've just
It is
given you an
not
example.
possible.
I've just
That
given you an example.
And your example, you're refusing to accept all the other factors. You see, if it was
What
an
are the other
isolated,
factors?
if it was an isolated argument that it's possible just to create a ward here and another ward here, and then you had not factored in, this village has 5 people, and that village has 100,000 people. That is something
No.
else.
But One village could have 100,000
at
people,
that
and the other
point-
500,000 people. So there's a lower threshold. There's no
Yes.
upper threshold.
Yes.
So the
But at
opportunity
the point
for
of
a
now
disparity
creating
to
the boundary,
emerge.
at the point of creating the boundary, that is what is going to be considered.
that
The
taken-
lower limit is considered. The upper limit is not
the
considered.
upper limit is
It's
also
not
considered.
considered.
The
There-
upper limit.
there is no limit
Why
on the
is
upper limit.
IEBC
We will look
asking?
at the constitution.
Why is the
At
IEBC
the constitution.
asking
Look.
for data on population?
Why do you think they even divide constituencies? Because the upper limit is considered.
Yes.
If you are this many, it
The
can be one
population,
constituency
the first
divided
consideration,
into
Yes,
two.
but
the
if you
first,
figure
So it
in-
is considered.
the first consideration, Jerry, is the upper. In fact, you don't even go to the
hold
lower.
on. If you
The
figure,
upper
if you
limit
figure
is what
in
is first consideration.
geographical land mass, then that actually skews it, whereby it's not just the population they're looking at. There will be situations that arise whereby an MCA or an MP is representing a disproportionate number of people
You know,
in
you've already
decision
said
making.
this.
There is no doubt. I can say it 10 times, CT. I can re-elaborate elaborate.
It
I
will
can
not
go
make
over
it.
it.
But
over
it's not
and
going
It
to
will not-
change
it will
anything
not
because
what
make
I'm
it
trying to tell you,
right.
for the sake of debate, what I'm saying is hypothetically possible, and it must be considered when
we are
consider
considering
when we
it,
consider
and we're
democracy.
telling you it is
That
impractical.
hypothesis,
It doesn't
Jerry,
even work that
we are
way.
telling you, Jerry, that
The reality
hypothesis
is not
has
what you're
been
saying.
considered. The reason
Every-
why you have that boundary exercise is because of that hypothesis being considered.
And they considered.
And among the conditions for considering boundaries is take account of population, and not just
there's
whimsical population. You have got to get the official census.
Yes.
That has given you the upper limit and told you
and the-
these are the number of people who live.
You know, even
here.
if you
there's a
lower
hypothesize,
limit.
Jerry,
Go back.
even
we
if
will
you
look at the
hypothesize,
law, because they do have statute that they follow.
Okay,
This is the
tell us
IEBC.
about the law then.
We will look at the law. I need to get into it. We will look at the law,
The first-
and you will
and-
see that in
and
terms
that's
of
the thing.
upper, and this same argument comes when it comes to resource allocation in terms of population and densely populated areas and sparsely populated areas, in that they don't take into account certain factors. And it's exactly, you can
which
draw
factors are these that
parallels
they don't take care of, Jerry?
that some places are densely populated and others aren't in terms of land mass
They
and so on.
do.
It's
Land mass is given an unequal or undue weight in that
You know,
equation.
you have to
How?
prove this thing you're saying because it
How?
is not true.
How? So give us an
So
example
whereby
and
you
show
have
us
you
where
have
the
you
number
have
of people
so
versus
whereby you
land
have
mass
absurdities.
versus
Yes, you have absurdities whereby people in Lamu, an individual in Lamu, if you divide the amount of money they get as a county per person, you'll find that they get 20,000 shillings per person.
No, that
now,
is
if
not.
you
No,
do
no,
that,
no, no.
yes.
That
If you do
discussion.
that, no, hold on. Let
You
me
are
finish.
narrowing it
No,
down
it
to
is-
something which is not true. No,
it is
I have to, this one I have to interject
no,
right
it's
now
exactly
because
the same
it is
in
not
terms
true.
of votes. Let me finish.
It
what I'm-
isn't that.
It
They
is
also
true.
consider alongside that the
Yes.
underdevelopment of that particular
They
place.
consider a number of things, but this is the absurdity that it leads to because of the weight they place on those other considerations. So, for instance, Lamu will get per person in a year 20,000 shillings, whereas Kiambu, because it is densely populated, people end up with 3,000 shillings per person. Now, that is unfair. This is the idea
How
of
did you arrive?
proportional
How did they
representation.
arrive at the 3,000 and the 20,000?
If you take the amount of money,
it was not
because
just
no,
because
hold
you
on,
are
I will
5
tell
people
you.
in this
No,
constituency.
if you take the amount of money that the county gives them divided by the population,
That's not how it
now
works.
it is
How
to
did-
get to how much you get per
how
That
did-
is
person.
not how it
how
works
do we
in
arrive-
to
Nairobi.
get to how
No,
much
that-
then
That's
That's
how
how
you
much-
want it to work, but
No,
that's
no,
not how it works.
How did we arrive
CT,
at the,
you've
how
missed
did we
my
arrive
point.
at the
Oh, no,
amount?
No,
I got your
okay.
point
Can you guys
perfectly.
let me talk instead
No.
of interjecting? Let
No,
me
we're
talk.
interjecting
Then you
because
can
we're
ask the
interjecting
questions. No, let me
because
talk.
we've
CT
allowed
is
you to
telling
talk.
Me, no, CT is telling me that's not how it works. Have you heard what I have to say?
Yes, we have.
No,
but
but
you're
you've
repeating
said
yourself.
this.
So how?
you're repeating
no,
yourself,
I
Jerry.
can
How
do that.
does
You
it
keep
work?
saying what have I
But
repeated?
if you're
CT?
repeating yourself,
what have I
we have to-
repeated?
So
What
how
have
You
I-
are
does it
telling
work?
us how money is given to the county and how it's divided by the population, and how that is already skewed wrongly because people of Kiambu will benefit less than the people of Lamu. And
Yes,
we're telling you
now-
that's
And
not
that is
how
not
it
the-
works.
No.
How
How
that's not the
do you
case.
ascertain how much you get per person in a county? How do you ascertain?
How you ascertain how much money goes to the county?
No, I didn't say goes. I'm very
No, we are
specific.
telling you it
No.
goes.
No.
Let's start
I
with
know
how much-
exactly
how
how
the money
much it
has
goes.
gone to the county. How
I
the
know
money has
that.
gone to
I
the
know
county.
that. I am
There
asking
is
a
the
different
basic.
question. I know that. I am asking how do you ascertain how much money goes to the county per person? Because that's what you told me I was wrong at. When I told you Lamu, people in Lamu County get 20,000 per person,
Because
whereas people in
you-
Kiambu get 3,000. How do you ascertain that?
The people
Can we
in-
agree just on that first?
No, we can't
First
agree.
of all,
No, let's
we are
agree
not
on how you
agreeing.
ascertain it.
We are not
Why
agreeing.
aren't you agreeing? What
The
aren't you agreeing
individual
with?
in Lamu versus the individual in Kiambu, individually, first of all, they get the same amount.
No, they do not.
They,
Good Lord.
listen, they
You
get the
divide-
same
okay,
amount,
how do you
and
ascertain?
then from that formula, and then first of all, everybody gets the same amount, and then now we start looking at this person in Lamu. Do they have a hospital near them? No, they don't. So we need to build a hospital. Add them something.
You work the
this
other way
person
around.
in Kiambu.
You work the other way
Yeah,
around.
of course
What
we are.
happens?
Of course we work. We work
No.
the
What
other way around.
happens?
But I'm just
You
trying to
take-
bring it to your side so that we work
And I will
from your
go into
side.
I will go into the formula. But let's just get the basics. How do we ascertain how much money each person in Lamu gets? You take the amount of money that the central government gives them and divide it by the population, isn't it?
This is a very skewed
Now,
argument, by the
it's
way.
not.
It
Now,
is.
How does it work?
Listen. In doing so, you will find that each person in Lamu gets 20,000, whereas in Kiambu, they get 3,000. Now, if you look at the formula that led them to that, and you look at the parameters that they consider in the equation, and there's a number of different parameters from land mass to previously marginalized communities, so they do it as an equitable fund and so on, through to population. The weight that is placed on land mass is skewed because it doesn't take into account a number of things. They say it's so that they can build a network to provide services services. But even in a densely populated area, you might need to build a network. You might need to build bridges. You might need to build roads to get to places. So it's very skewed because of the weight that is placed on landmass. And the idea of population and proportional representation comes into play, because it's very unfair that somebody in Lamu should get 20,000 per person, whereas somebody or the governor in Kiambu will get 3,000 per person. Is it people we're looking to service, or is it land we're looking to service? It's people we're looking to give services as government. So those are the things we need to take into account. Population is very important. And I can bring that argument back in terms of representation and MCAs. If an MCA is representing 50,000 people and another is representing 20,000 people, then I'm sorry, there's something undemocratic about his vote in the assembly, because the disparity becomes undemocratic. How you don't see that, I don't know.
It could also be.
Are you done now? So that we have kept quiet so that you finish. Are you finished?
For now, yeah.
All right, go.
Are you trying to tell me that all these individuals who sit down and plan these things, the Commission on Revenue Allocation, all these things, you're telling me that your argument and the argument you're putting across trumps everything that they have considered, and that all these things you're raising, they have not considered in making the decisions that they make?
In fact, these are the very debates they're having at the moment. These are the current arguments that they're having, because they hadn't realized what the results would be. Now, as they see them, they say, hold on, also it's been 10 years for you to build this infrastructure because you were a previously ignored county, yet you're still getting this money, this equalizing fund to build these structures. Shouldn't you be getting less every year, because every year you should be building these structures to allow you to provide services, because maybe you're sparsely populated or the area was not developed enough? So these are the debates they're having, and they're constantly reviewing the actual formula.
Good.
Yeah.
Now,
However,
you're right in some things.
I'm
Number
right
one,
in everything.
You're right in the fact that they are considering reviewing the formula. That is their work. That is what they're supposed to do. Come up with a formula, then look at how long does this formula last and how does it work?
What the impact has been.
What the impact has been.
And
Number two, the first basic thing that they do is they look at the area. So they are not the ones who create boundaries for constituencies and wards and counties. That is somebody else's job. So the person who's creating those constituencies and wards has considered very many things. They've considered the population, they've considered the geographical area, they've considered the other interests, the community's representation and the communities living here. They've considered all those things and come up with the boundaries and the areas. Secondly, now, when you come to allocation of resources, the formula applies all of these things. It looks at the number of people in this area. It looks at the equalization fund. It looks at the development in the area. It looks at all those factors and says, so how do we make sure that everybody is getting served well by the country? Now, coming back to the votes, the point of actually having this boundary review is to ensure that you have proper representation of people across the wards. That is one threshold. That one, the number of people who are going to be in a certain ward is not going to be improperly high or improperly lower than the next ward. The other safeguard that we have is the 2/3 vote. Once you have 2/3, once you have said that more than 2/3 of the people have to vote yes so that impeachment takes place, then you have basically ensured that at least 2/3 of the voting population has been represented.
And I think you've made this assurance based on the fact that once people went and voted in the MCA, it was with the understanding that this individual is going to represent their needs or represent their wants in the future. And I think that was understood from the beginning. If we go forward and see that there's agitation, that actually my MCA is actually not representative of my needs as an individual or that as of a community, I think we'll hear that agitation actually go a little bit further. But in this case, the will of the people, by virtue of the vote that was held yesterday, is that they do not want Ferdinand Waitito in this position as governor. The will of the people, as can be seen by the representation of MCAs. It sounds simple, but that's basically what you said when you put these fellows in leadership. That's what you said. So the will of the people right now is that they do not want him to be there. Now, should the Senate come back and put him back in, we're basically saying that that decision would override the will of the people. So which plays against the other is the question.
Right. That's actually also a good debate as well. So does the Senate override the will of a particular county?
The truth of the matter is that if you are to actually have a vibrant democracy, so to speak, there is no aspect, there is no facet of even what already exists that cannot be debated. And the issue of representation is a tricky one. I raise it, I'm raising it again. At what point do the representatives who apparently were voted to represent the populace, at what point are they actually representing the populace? At what point are they allowed to represent the populace, and at what point are they not? Because I would assume that the moment anything goes to an assembly and it's legislative, you will therefore assume that you are being represented. And the decision that is made will be made on your behalf. And if you then disagree, what do you do? If I disagree with the decision, if I say, for instance, I'm a citizen of the county of Kiambu and I do not agree with the decision that was made, because you will know who voted in which direction, what recourse do I have?
Well, I'm sure that you can go and have the discussion that we always say that you can make it plain in terms of your dislike or appreciation of a certain thing, in terms of what will be done because you've expressed your uncomfortability or your dissatisfaction with it. I don't know that would take a process whereby something would happen immediately, because this, in this instance, would override anything else. And like I said, you already took the decision to say that this person will represent your views. By the time you voted for an MCA, it was with the understanding that whatever they make a decision on is representative of you. That's basically what you said. When you voted that individual in, you have said the decisions that you are going to make over the next 5 years across the board are representative of mine. That's what you've said. So then for you to come back later and say, well, actually, that decision that they made, I don't really like it. You're going to have to wait until the next 5 years to put in an individual then probably who's going to make decisions that then you are comfortable with. And that's the thing about a vote. And I think it's very important then taking all factors into consideration when you actually are making that vote. But here you are, you've said this individual, Eric Latif, my MCA for such an area, I trust them. And when incidences arise where they have to make a decision that would affect me in one way or another, I trust them. And that decision that they will make will agitate for me. Unfortunately or fortunately, it's the decision that has been made. And with that, like what we saw yesterday, you can go ahead and say the people of Kiambu do not want Ferdinand Waititu as their governor, as seen by the vote of the MCAs that were represented. Period. Now, can the Senate come then and override the will of the people? Absolutely. And you can see the overriding of that will of the people should they decline to convict. That is what is going to happen.
Maybe among the considerations, this is where the answer to CT's question lies. The fact that, well, MCAs have ganged up. Let's actually just look at it this way, that assuming that they have acted in their own self-interest and not in the interest of the people who elected them, and they've ganged up and removed a governor by impeaching him, then you have some safeguard. Go to the Senate, and the Senate will have to consider the procedure used. The Senate will have to look at the reasons given, and the Senate will have to look, was this really serving the interests of the people, or was it serving the self-interest of the few elected representatives in the assembly? As well, because they're going to have sittings, then I'm assuming this is the point where the citizens as well can come and present their own petition before the Senate and say, we don't feel that the decision that was taken by the county assembly represents our feelings as well. So there's those having those multi-steps gives safeguards, and this is how we are basically protecting our democracy. So it goes to the Senate, and the Senate has to be very impartial. This is where we are basically calling upon the Senate. This is the time for you to be impartial, for you to sit back and consider all matters.
Review the evidence, review every single
call
factor.
in the governor, because the governor, of course, was not called in by the assembly. So call in the governor, hear the side of the governor. If you have people who have other interest groups would like to be enjoined and to make their presentations before you, listen to them.
I think at this point is where you would see that there will be some kind of tinkering then with democracy. It is at this point that you say, well, the will of the people as represented by these MCAs, there's a possibility here that will, which is one of the tenets of democracy, then will not be upheld. And there's that fear that this could actually be the case, because it's always going to come to that. By virtue of the fact that these individuals represent the people, whether it's 5,000 in one ward and 50,000 in another, at the end of the day, it is the overall representation of the will of the people. Now, that is where you could see a tinkering with democracy, because people would then say, look, if the Senate comes in and says, look, we are the Lord and Masters trying to then prove your authenticity in this position of office, and say that, okay, if we see that they ganged up and they were not looking at all the factors taken into consideration, here we have an opportunity to overrule. Then you can say, well, then that's not really democratic, because the will of the people was to get this gentleman out.
So one of the two bodies has actually gone against the tenets of democracy. One of them has...
If they do or do not convict, that's where you would see the problem, I think.
What if it's not the will of the people through and through?
Look,
from the beginning to the end.
If I remove ourselves from Kenya for the moment and look at a very heated discussion and debate on Brexit in the UK, the question you would ask is, the population, the voting population in the UK, were they adequately informed? And yes, about Brexit, were they told about the benefits, the consequences? Were they actually informed? Now, again, opinions will differ on this particular subject. Some will say they were.
Let me open the phone lines and then we get to the top of the hour and take a look at traffic. 0719-012-600. We're discussing the Kiambu impeachment of Governor Waititu.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
There's been a major accident around Shooters in Utawala involving 12 vehicles this morning at about 10 minutes ago, and it's quite a serious one. There are police on site, so exercise caution as you approach the area, and please exercise patience as well as traffic is cleared, because what we're probably going to see is that more and more vehicles trying to create additional lanes, and it's going to cause an absolute mess. So again, please avoid the area if you can, and also make sure that you don't add to it. So what we have now is a Lofty and 7 vehicles, 2 trucks. So no casualties or fatalities at the moment, but let's see what happens as police are on site trying to clear that up. It's graduation day around the city. So within the city, on Thika Road, and everybody who's trying to make their way to those areas, we're going to see heightened levels of traffic this morning. So if you've not gotten out now, you might want to make a mad dash for it, but be careful while you do. We'll let you know how things look like. But already around Westlands and of course at Uhuru Highway into and out of the city, traffic has already built up. Let's see what it looks like in a short while. Give us a call, send us a message if you see something we should know about. Let's try and keep ourselves moving this morning.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Nyeri Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room, the only way to start your
day. And the phone lines are open 0719-012-600. That's 0719-012-600. 2 questions. 1, do you think the will of the people was exercised yesterday by the Kiambu County Assembly in impeaching their governor? Number 2, do you feel comfortable that or confident that this process will be fairly conducted in the Senate?
How long has this debate been in the public arena?
Which one?
The one of regarding Ferdinand Waititu and his alleged misdeeds.
Oh, it's months.
A couple of months, yes.
Right.
Precisely. And this is an assembly that represents the people of Kiambu. Have we ever had a case where in the county of Kiambu they have attempted to impeach a governor?
It's the first time.
So it's the first time, and that's what the assembly has determined.
So you feel that they have the pulse of the county?
I believe they do. If MPs act in a manner that they feel, or MCAs rather, or the assembly in a manner that the public feel is against their will, they will respond. The other day in Kisumu, the
Speaker
of the assembly was removed. Now, he was supposedly a popular because they voted in. It's an election.
Let's pick this one. This is, speaking of Kisumu, Emmanuel is in Kisumu. Good morning, Emmanuel.
Yes.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, this is Emmanuel from Kisumu.
Yes, Emmanuel.
I wanted to make a contribution concerning the impeachment of Kiambu Governor.
Yes.
So, in my own opinion, hello?
Yes,
Yes.
I can hear you. Go ahead.
I don't know if you can remember a scenario that happened with Wambora, the current governor in Embu.
Yes.
Yes.
He was impeached, is it twice or three times?
I believe it was twice.
Yeah, it is twice, and then it was taken to the Senate, it was upheld,
Mm-hmm.
and then he went back to the court.
Yep.
He went up to Supreme Court where now it was not upheld. The court ruled that it was not good for him to be sent home.
Mm.
So if you guys are talking about the MCAs representing the will of people, I don't think that is right.
Mm-hmm.
Because if indeed the MCAs were to represent the will of the people, I don't think they could have re-elected the governor for the second term in 2017. Is that right?
The
But
MCAs in
didn't-
Embu in this case.
Yeah.
Yeah, in this case. Yeah.
So, yeah, the people
So-
still express their confidence in Mr. Wambora.
In Mr. Wambora.
Right.
So what I think is that in the scenario of Mr. Waititu,
Mm-hmm.
the vote that Mr. Waititu garnered cannot be compared to the votes of the MCAs who impeached him. Is that right?
In totality,
Totally.
or
In totality, that's right. If now we are going to the views of the citizens of Kiambu County as a whole.
I'm not sure the difference between the total number of votes for all the MCAs versus the total number of votes for the individual governor candidates.
So what I think as Kenyans and as citizens,
Yeah.
what we believe in most is judiciary.
Uh-huh.
We don't even trust the Senate, and we don't even trust the MCAs that we elected in the county assembly. So the judiciary has the final say about this. If the Supreme Court or the final judicial house
Yeah.
will decide that the governor doesn't have, they have reviewed and seen that he doesn't fit to be in the office,
Yep.
then I don't think us as citizens will elect the governor or any other leader in the office in the following term again. I'm citing my research on the case of Mr. Wambora.
Yep.
Let's say in the case of Mr. Wambora, if the Supreme Court could have said that, okay, he's not fit to be in the office and he could have been sent home, I don't think the constituencies of the county members of Embu could have been elected him again in 2017.
You do have a very valid point. In fact, that debate goes on to even Makueni, because the
Yes.
governor of Makueni took the matter even further. He
Yes.
actually said, if this is the case, why don't we just dissolve the entire thing, and why don't we go to a re-election? And the matter
Yes.
did go to the Senate. The matter even went as far as the president. I mean, the matter really went actually far up. And the scenario you paint actually happened. When we did have another election, the governor of Makueni was re-elected. The people who were not re-elected were
The MCAs.
the MCAs. So even as we look at your case, we need to ask ourselves, were the MCAs in Embu re-elected? Because then we would know what the people actually thought about it. Because if the people agreed with the governor and disagreed with their previous decision, then the majority of the MCAs in Embu would not have been elected. Do you have information whether the majority went back or they were rejected by the people?
No, the majority never went back. I
Okay.
think the majority never went back. And then another thing that we need to focus on, we need all my pleas, we need to strengthen our judiciary. Kenyans have lost trust with our leaders. We've lost trust with our leaders. We now put our trust in the judiciary, whatever the judiciary will tell us. Now, for example, the ruling that we are waiting for the three governors to know where the ruling of Justice Ngugi Mumbi, that the governors, when you are charged, then you are not supposed to hold the office. The direction, we're eagerly waiting for the direction that the court
of
will
appeal.
give us.
Yeah.
Yeah, the court of appeal will give us, and that is what we will follow. Because sasa wote wamekuwa vigeuge, we can't believe in our leaders
You don't know who
anymore.
to trust.
You know, Emmanuel, there are those who will tell you that the one of the functions of the court is to interpret the law. All right. Now, Justice Mumbi gave us her interpretation of it and said, "This is how I see this thing." Now we're waiting for are there three? The appellate court has three. A three-judge bench to tell us what they think. And so, what happens when there's further complaint?
Goes to the Supreme Court.
Goes to the Supreme Court. After the Supreme Court, end of
That's
story.
it.
End of story.
Thank you, Emmanuel, though, for your contribution. Asante sana.
Thank you.
0719-012-600. Do you believe that the people of the MCAs in Kiambu represented the will of the people? And is the Senate going to be also representing the will of the people? What do you see happening in the Senate when the impeachment actually goes up to the Senate?
In my opinion, the real test as to whether the people of Kiambu agree with their MCAs will be the next elections. If, whatever the outcome of this particular impeachment, if Ferdinand Waititu does retain his seat or whether he leaves, whatever the outcome, these MCAs, I don't see some MCAs, some may step down, but I don't see them. People tend to want...
They'll stay on.
Yes, exactly. Now, whether the people of Kiambu elect them or re-elect them or reject them, to me will be an indication of this decision that we are now discussing.
Sami, good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Good morning,
How is
Sami.
Malindi today?
Oh, Malindi is nice. We are just enjoying the sunshine.
Good.
Yeah, I would like to contribute that actually what we are experiencing right now is just sort of drama because we are very soon we had Wambura, we had Makueni, we had even Taita. But I think here the problem is legality, the procedure in which these MCS follow. I remember with the Wambura, the problem was that they did not give Wambura opportunity to defend himself. So in this case also, I think with Waititu, the case is in court. And this is a sub judice because we cannot actually discuss impeachment of someone whose case is in court. So I think at the end of the day, we are going to experience that this case of impeachment will not see the light of the day because of the procedural illegality and whatever. Same thing with Mwilu. Mwilu actually there was a matter that Mwilu was to face the tribunal, and others had already gone to the court. So there was a conflicting issue there. So the same thing will happen with Waititu because the case is in court. But I know it is the pressure of some of the politicians that want to see Waititu out. It's not actually the will of the people, but because there is this lacuna with Ngugi Mumbi giving a ruling that once one is actually accused of there's allegation of corruption, one should step aside and whatever. So you see, you can see and imagine a scenario where the governor is not there, things have to be done. The deputy cannot do anything. So this.
Thank you, Sami.
I assure you.
Asante
All right,
sana.
thank you very much.
In the point of looking at what happened in the case of Embu, where Governor Wambora, even after the Senate actually upheld the MCA's decision, went to this up all the way to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court quashed both assemblies' decisions, and then the people, of course, re-elected him. It tells you something about whether it was the will of the people to begin with, and whether the people felt that Wambora had wronged them, had gone against what he had promised to do for them.
It's a shame that the arm of government that we most have trust and confidence in is the judiciary, considering, from my perspective, they have the least democratic legitimacy, given they're not elected, they're appointed. But these are the people clearly that, or this is the arm of government that we have most trust in. It's interesting that we didn't see the undemocratic nature of the judiciary not reinforcing and reinstating this impeachment. If it's gone through those processes, and I've always argued that Parliament should reign sovereign simply because they are elected, and that is reflective of the will of the people, which is the cornerstone of democracy. So it's interesting that the judiciary can actually trump the will of the people.
All the way.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I think it brings in, I'm now getting to see the point that you were raising. Let's actually end with, an impeachment should end with a referendum. There should be a question that comes on a very specific issue at this point.
What's clear from
it goes to the
Wambora,
Senate, then it goes to the people. And if the people accept that the governor ought to go home,
Yeah.
then that's a final decision.
What's clear from Kibwana and Wambora is that the MCAs weren't representing the will of the people because there's external factors, there's the politicking and so on. So even if you say they went to these barazas and so on, this was somebody who was then re-elected. I'm very aware of the political nuances and intricacies and who is being paid by who. MCAs are very malleable and prone to these brown envelopes. So you do find that it's not a representation of the will of the people, both from a political angle, but also I think from representation. It's not something they go and consult with their guys about this. So it's undemocratic in that nature. And I think the best two examples for that have been Kivutha and Kibwana, because these people have been brought back by their
Kivutha and Kibwana is the same.
Kivutha and Wambora.
Yes.
But ideally, elected representatives ought to go to their people to seek their opinion, but really on what issues? Is it contentious issues that perhaps will impact on the lives of those representatives, or can they actually practically go back to the people on each and every issue that they debate?
No, I don't think so.
I thought there's barazas, that you said they go to.
Yeah,
Chiefs,
that's
no.
true. I mean,
barazas are not.
I think
are not
regularly
held by. It's actually they are called by government representatives who are in the form of chiefs.
So what was this
of
public
DOs.
participation that we were using to reinforce
Public
the fact
participation?
that
MPs and so forth called meetings. They call rallies. That is public participation for them.
because you were adamant that there's been public participation in this.
Yes, there is.
Okay.
In this
so
particular process.
Yes,
of impeachment.
yes, you're aware. You're adamant that the
No, I was
MCAs have gone back
adamant
to
that
the people.
are consulted.
Okay.
And people are spoken
which,
to. Not on
which
this particular
people
issue.
are spoken for?
Okay.
That is the question. Is it the politicking that takes over and trumps everything, or do they actually go back to the people? Because if we use Kivutha and Wambora, it's very clear that the people weren't consulted, the people weren't being spoken for by these MCAs. There's other external politicking factors that come into play because
I think
they
public
wouldn't be
participation
re-elected.
in the impeachment process happens in the Senate. So during the Senate hearings, that's why it's open. So you have, of course, the representatives of the Assembly coming to speak. You've got interested parties that are welcomed as well, invited by the Senate to come and make their presentations. And of course, you've got the governor himself coming to give his side of the story, right? So I think that's where a bit of, this is the hearing. In the vote of the MCAs basically present a case, they debate it, and then they take a vote. And that's it, just like we've seen, I think, even in this particular one in the U.S. House of Representatives.
Right. Safe to say that the MCAs, well, maybe safe to say that they have a kind of a feeling of the heartbeat of the people generally over time, in terms of what people are thinking, what people are saying, because they're in that space.
Ground.
They're on that ground. Hopefully that they have those considerations taken into mind. To say that, because when we saw that Waitito was bundled out of office, did we hear hue and cry coming out of Kiambu from the people? That
You'll hear it today.
At that time, did we? In the first instance, when he was taken to court, when he was arrested, did we hear, any of the shouting that came out of this county?
There are counties that are louder than others. Now when does he go to court?
We don't know yet. It has not been, or when does he go before the Senate? We don't know.
Court or Senate?
Senate, sorry.
Senate. Yeah, we don't know.
So the Speaker has a number of days to present this resolution of the MCAs to the Senate Speaker, and then the Senate Speaker, of course, will present it to the House. Remember, the Senate is on recess.
Until?
And they're not due back
until after the new year.
Yep.
Yeah.
So everything will wait until the new year.
Everything
next
is
year.
on hold.
But the thing that I'd like to consider here is this. When is it that the people actually require the representatives to actually consult them? And when is it that, when do the constituents consult their leaders? Or what is it that constitutes consultation?
Isn't it
and what is it
something-
that, well, speaking from a practical position, because I've worked with MCAs, and I know for a fact that they are forever being spoken to and being sought after by their constituents. It's a constant thing.
This is what I'm saying.
They are
So it's
constantly
like
talking
they have a
to
hand.
there's
They
a
have
ward
a hand
office.
or
Yes.
feeling on the heartbeat
They
of what
do.
the people is.
They do have
generally.
an idea.
They do. I
They
think
do have
so.
an idea.
Except in the case of
Wambora
Embu and which are the
Makueni.
two that we've seen.
Yeah.
No,
So,
that in
interesting.
this case, this is what falls into the realm of self-interest now coming into play, where they didn't actually consult their constituents on the actual process.
Or
of
maybe they consulted their constituents, then they ignored what the constituents were
So
telling
why bother
them.
consulting them?
Yeah,
Well, to give the impression
to
that
give
you
the impression that, you know what, I came and
you've
spoke
actually
to you.
spoken to them.
When I
Because
go
you're
to
not going to go
Parliament.
back to the ward to ask his people what they actually told them.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's 19 minutes past 7 o'clock. The conversation continues on our social media platforms, Spice FM KE on Facebook and Twitter at Spice FM KE. Our hashtag is The Situation Room.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Mombasa 87.9, Kisumu 102.5, 96.0 in Nakuru, 96.7 Eldoret, 90.9 in Nyeri, 97.7 in Malindi. Live streaming on Facebook, Spice FM KE, our website www.spicefm.co.ke, and on YouTube, Spice FM KE is our channel. In the room, my name is Eric Latif. We have Jerry Thorne, Nduoko, and CT Muga.
The one debate that has been in, the public arena for quite some time in this country has been the existence of what we call a middle class. And I bring this discussion against this backdrop. One, that Kenya is no longer considered by the World Bank and other agencies that lend money as a third world banana republic, as I like calling us, but that we are a middle income country. And one of the premises on which this particular positioning is the consideration is given to is the growth of what we call the middle class. Now, the middle class, by definition, in our context as Kenyans, often has to do with income. It's someone's income, and more specifically, the disposal aspect of that income that comes into play and then becomes the focus of the debate. But if you consider that this is Kenya, it's an African country, and the Africans are the predominant people who actually live here, then other factors other than just what we consider their earnings, whether it's in a business or employment, ought to be taken into account. But yet, we are told there is a middle class. And with the middle class, then comes a debate when we talk about politics in this Kenya. How mobilized or how informed are this same middle class when it comes to agitating, say, for political change? There's a debate again that has been had and is still ongoing. This is my contention, that the issue of the middle class, or the subject or the concept of middle class in this country is actually mythical. It doesn't exist. There is no such thing as a middle class. What you have, at best, is a lower middle class by the definition, the financial definition of a middle class, and that many people are either aspirational or give the impression of being middle class for a brief period of time and then recede back to the actual positioning, which is nothing close to a middle class. That is my contention.
What is the official definition of middle class?
Official as such doesn't exist. What you would say is the commonly held view.
Conventional,
right? Is that these are people who earn, it's based on an earning of a certain amount of money pegged to the dollar per day. It ranges between $2 and $70 per day. And some even look at it as the actual earning as $2 and the household income per day or spending per day at $17 per day. Now, if you take this and multiply it and make it into Kenyan shillings,
so there's 200 bob a day. Around there.
It ranges to 1,700 shillings a day. Now, when you consider that there are many Kenyans who actually earn a salary of 2,000 shillings a month, and then there are others who probably earn 5, then this hypothesis would actually be true. But for it to be actually so, that earning has to be consistent over a long period of time. And then there's the other aspect that is also pegged to the earnings, is what you call a disposal income. Now, this is where it gets tricky. For many citizens of this particular country, that concept is as elusive as the term middle class. The issue of a disposable income is something that you pursue, but you never really quite get there. It can be disposable for a very short period of time, but usually it's actually See, let me define
disposable is when you can buy luxury.
Yes, exactly. But
when you have extra.
yes, but in this country,
The basics.
people will borrow to buy luxuries when the basics haven't been met. So there'll be the appearance of what would be traditionally referred to as a middle class, whereas in reality, it is a middle class that has been borrowed. And with time, when the repayment of that particular debt that has allowed the outward manifestation of it comes into being, then the person recedes back to what they were. So I am saying this concept of a middle class in this country of ours is actually more mythical than real. That's what I'm saying.
So the Kenya National Bureau of Standards does actually have a definition of middle class in terms of monetary standards, which is anybody who spends between 23,670 shillings and 199,999, so just below 200,000. So
Spend.
anybody
month.
who spends that per month is classed as
As
middle class. Of course, I think that disparity is huge. I see people living very differently, those spending 23,000 and those spending 200,000, but that's the classification or categorization that the Kenya Bureau of Standards has put. And of course, the debt cycle is there because we do have this aspirational living with what is sold to us with marketing, with our ability to access funds in terms of loans and so on. Now, I think where you would see sort of some revolt or some frustration is if people couldn't afford or didn't have access to these things. So there's cars that are being marketed to us, but you don't have access to them, of which you do in Kenya. If you're middle class, you can access a loan, so that increases the debt cycle. But you're right, we do live from paycheck to paycheck, and that's based on this wealth acquisition or this consumerism that we see, this need for external validation that we see. Because you don't find people taking out a loan to buy a plot in Kajiado that will eventually gain value. No, they'll take out a loan to buy a car that, of course, is a depreciating asset, but people will see you with it. So it's this societal pressures, I would say peer pressure and consumerism that is driving this debt cycle within the middle class. But I want to disagree with CT. There is definitely an emerging middle class. If you compare sort of the 2000s and the 80s, there's a gap that was filled within that wealth disparity because previously you were either rich or poor. There was no middle class. Whereas now you do find, people can afford certain luxuries. So, you'll find Java houses popping up. I think this sort of growth of certain industries is also evidence that there's a middle class, pizza inns and so on. These are affordable little luxuries that are popping up, and they've been sustained by the middle class, I think, because it is emerging and I think growing. As to whether it's sustainable or whether it will actually contribute to the economy in the long run, that's a different question.
If we actually discuss it and say, you said 23,000 to 117.
23,670 is the lower limit, and then 199,900
per month.
199 per month. What would people be spending on? So let's think about the basics first of all. Housing, so it's either rent or mortgage, food, clothing, transport.
You don't buy clothes every month, do you? I don't.
Well, not every month, but let's just put it there in that kitty.
So what are your usual expenses?
What are usual expenses? There plus
assuming their children's
transport,
school fees.
and there's the school fees and the rest. So when somebody is actually able to spend 23,000 of that in a month, then that's... So we're not talking about the extras that go into luxury. No. It's basically if you're spending 23,000 on your basics, you're already in the middle class, and you can afford that.
That could be because it's comparative, and that the lower end is so low. Because it doesn't make sense to me, and no offense to anybody out there, that if you're spending 23,000, I wouldn't class you. I personally, just intuitively, wouldn't put you as middle class
because it means that your earning is above 23,000. Let's say your earning is 25,000.
Actually, no. The key here is
spending 120% of your salary.
You could be spending
debt.
all that you earn
and more.
And all that you've borrowed.
In my spending list, I've also added loan repayments because you're servicing that loan on a monthly basis.
Eric, you see, the question that you're asking here is, you see, the definition that Nyeri has given us has to do with spending. My contention was that the middle class in this country is aspirational. It's not real. People aspire, and the aspiration is manifested by the very thing she's saying. if I drive a certain car, I'm considered middle class. How I have it, how I own it, or that's a different discussion.
Whether I'm paying for it or not.
If I can go to Java and I can be seen at Java, it's aspirational. I can afford that meal clearly. But as to whether I can sustain it, that's a totally different discussion. So the tenets that give or manifest what we are calling middle class is something that we see in many Kenyans. I am saying,
But City,
it is a myth. It is not sustainable. For it to be a reality, it is something that has a base and it can be sustained. Like, say, an income that you are guaranteed is going to be with you every single month.
It could be
could
argued,
be.
though, that aspiration does manifest itself and crystallize into a middle class because of their spending. So their spending keeps the economy going in terms of from the economic perspective.
and you're not spending on a monthly basis because we are talking about a monthly
No, it's,
spend.
when it's monthly, it's cumulative.
Yes.
And I am contending that a lot of these things are supported. What you're seeing are supported by debts. Debts upon debts upon debts upon debts. So it's a vicious cycle of debt that promotes this. And I'm saying that in itself does not constitute what we are referring to as a middle class or a growing middle class. What we have is a growing portfolio of debts that in many ways cannot actually be sustained. That's really what I'm saying.
No, maybe not, City. I think if you have debt, so of course you've passed a certain threshold for you to acquire that debt.
In this country, no.
You've passed a certain
Eric,
threshold
no.
for you to acquire some debt.
Eric, no.
Somebody has basically evaluated you and thought
Eric, we've
you'd
debated
be
this
able
on
to-
this very
you'll be
day,
able
on
to
this
pay.
very room, and we've looked at the role of fintechs, and we've discussed all these
Yes.
things. And what the picture that we get is not one of a growing population of people who have the sort of earnings that enables them to acquire debt and repay it regularly. The converse is what we've actually seen as being true.
But the level of debt that we're talking about that actually affords you this kind of lifestyle is a level of debt that, and we're talking about it over a period of time as well. So we're not saying that somebody who last month was unable to even pay their rent and then next month they're able to go and buy a kilo of meat and even go to one of these fancy restaurants. We're not talking about that. We're talking about people who you regularly see spending this way. If they're able to spend this way on a regular basis, it means that they have a source of income on that regular basis.
But
But
Whether
you're
they're
assuming
servicing-
you're assuming that people are spending this money and it is money that they have earned. You'd be surprised at the numbers of people who are spending
I
money
am
that they
factoring
have
in,
borrowed.
I'm factoring in that as well. They have borrowed and they are repaying.
Yes, but if they've
You would
borrowed to
assume.
buy depreciating assets such as cars, you could end up with negative equity. So it's not something that's going to grow this individual. You could end up
And they
owing
will-
for the car,
and
they
at-
take for
and
the
at
car.
that- at that point, they will fall out of the middle class bracket. But during that period,
which means,
they are in the middle class
which means
bracket.
if you follow the trajectory of the curve, it's not sustainable. There will be a dip, which is what CT is saying. This is not a sustainable middle class. If they were investing in appreciating assets, that's different. So if they were taking out a loan and buying land whereby the rate of the land going up is much higher than their interest rates, then that's fine. It's sustainable. But because of our culture, what has become our culture, we're buying a Prado, which as soon as you drive it out of the showroom,
That's
it's dropped 5 million shillings for starters. So if you needed to sell it because you've lost your job, you'll sell it and still owe 5 million shillings to the company that you bought it from or to your bank.
True.
So because of that, so it's not that the middle class is not sustainable. It's that, or because
It's not
they're
growing.
in the debt cycle. It's that they're not making the right investments to sustain themselves as a middle class. But then again, it's those very aspirations that drive the middle class to spend and
Are we
invest.
seeing
in
a
it.
shrinkage of that middle class?
There
Like
are
if you look
those-
in the
there
last
are
10
those who
years,
argue
would
that
you
it
say
is
it's,
so.
it's grown or is it
No,
shrinking?
there are debates on both sides of the divide. There are those who argue that it is actually growing, and they'll say it's manifest by. Remember the debate we had the other day here, where people were complaining about laundry. Remember that one? Yes.
Yep.
Yes, and there was one side of the debate, and there was the other. And why there's that surge is because there are all these developments coming up in what are predominantly and traditional middle class areas, isn't it? So from that, well, in that respect, you could say yes. But I would argue that if you want to perhaps make a definitive discussion about it, then you need to ask yourself whether what we are calling the economic growth of the country corresponds with what we are seeing. And you might find that there's a disparity there. it doesn't quite translate into what we're saying.
We're discussing the middle class. Is it a fallacy? Is it a reality in this country? At 27 minutes to 8 o'clock, you can call in 0719 012 600 as we take a look at what's happening on the roads.
And everything nice, everything nice.
Spice up your life.
All right, remembering the situation that we have in Utawala this morning, where now traffic is at a gridlock because of the accident that happened. It was a 12-car pileup. No fatalities, I guess, which is a good thing, but this is affecting traffic in that area. Jogo Road, when we want to look at it, there's traffic and it's bumper to bumper, inbound and outbound. Also remembering that we have a couple more days before Enterprise Road is open, so that affects a lot of the traffic in industrial area and it has spilled over to Jogo Road. Now, trying to get into the city centre today is all right so far, but also understanding that as the doors open or the gates open in major campuses, university campuses today, with graduations, that is going to affect traffic around the city. So you need to be ready for this today, folks. Don't say I didn't warn you. Coming off Mombasa Road and trying to get onto Uhuru Highway, also not so much of a problem right now, but it is building up and we want to see what it looks like in a short while. But for now, using Gong Road and Langata Road, trying to use Bagadi Way to get to the City Mortuary roundabout won't be too painful right now. It might change in a short while, but we'll be right here to let you know what it looks like. So we'll let you know what alternative routes to use if we find any. 0719 012 600.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Do we or do we not have a growing middle class in the Republic of Kenya? That's the question we're asking this morning. 0719 012 600. You can also post your comments on Facebook, Spice FM KE. We are live streaming there. And you can tag us on Twitter at Spice FM KE. Our hashtag is the Situation Room.
Do we have a population of people who now have increased ability to spend? I think absolutely. I think we have a growing number of the population who is earning more than they were 10 years ago. A couple of days ago, we saw the reports, the data that was collated over time and looking around the country, that the people who used to earn 20,000 shillings, for example, over the last 5 years, are now earning 40,000 shillings and above. So you have a doubling of that income over time. And if what we're saying, if a middle class is pegged to a certain amount of money that they earn, then absolutely we do have a growing middle class, or then people who are able to afford what they would not ordinarily afford previously because of what they're now able to earn. So I think it would be absolutely growing numbers of people, because if we look at these outlets that we've talked about, they're never empty. Right? If you want to use that as an indicator.
And more of them are popping up.
Yeah, exactly. And so the people who own them have seen the necessity to have more outlets open, because the ones that they have are jam-packed. And and it doesn't really matter what time of the month you're looking at, really, if you want to use that as an indicator to say. Now, whether or not they're using money that they actually have, or they're spending on credit, like you said, even if they are spending on credit, they've reached a certain threshold that would then allow for that credit. So obviously it's money that you earn, or at least a level that you have reached to allow you access credit, because you're not going to find somebody who earns 10,000 shillings a month having access to a credit card, for example, that gives you 200,000 shillings.
To 200,000.
Absolutely. So I think that bracket has grown.
Richard in Mombasa, good morning.
Good morning, Eric.
Good morning to you.
How's everyone there?
Fine, thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. I'm listening to your discussion, and I think I'm with Eric. What is going back to the definition of the middle class first?
Yep.
You have clearly said that it's somebody who, a class of people who own a certain bracket of earnings, right? Monthly earnings. Who spend, exactly.
Yes. Yeah.
Of course, it comes from earnings. You've got to earn before you spend.
It, yeah.
Yeah. Now, when whether it is growing is one fact, but the fact is, if I'm able to spend that amount within that bracket in a month, does it really matter whether I have to spend it the way the other folks are talking about, whether I have to
spend it on
whether it's a
luxury?
loan or not, on luxury or not. The fact is, I'm earning that much and I'm able to spend it, so I'm a middle class.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I think it's the notion of security. Can you sustain that lifestyle for 3 months after if you were to lose your job? I think that's what CT is talking about in terms of sustainability. So yes.
Okay. The middle class is mostly an unemployed lot. They are employed for them to access credit, for them to do that. Now the issue, I think the growth really depends on the general well-doing of the economy at the end of the day. Yeah.
Thank you, Richard.
That's my take.
Thank you, Richard. Ken, good morning.
Good morning, Marita. Hi, Andy.
Hello, good morning.
Hi, Jerry.
Morning.
I'm very well, thank you. And how are you?
Then, Ken, I need you to be a bit louder. You're faint.
Okay. I'll try to be a bit louder.
That's better.
And now,
yes.
okay, listening to this discussion today, I think I'm basically with City. Reason being that what we are calling a middle class is generally a shift in spending of the current generation. In that whatever you're saying that the food outlet, the fast food are coming up, that might be attributed to the demand as a result of the generation that is currently we are having. They really want to spend the money that they have.
Yeah.
You don't really have to. You want to live in a good neighborhood. I don't really have to buy a house in that neighborhood. I can as well go and just rent it.
Yeah.
Yes. So does that mean that my income has increased, or am I moving towards that? I want to be. It's a perception I have. I want to be seen, to be identified, to be there. Whatever happens, I'll go out of my means, and that's where I feel I need to be, and that's where I belong.
Yeah.
That sense of entitlement. So it doesn't mean that the middle class has grown. The middle class for me is a fallacy that doesn't exist. Yeah.
Thank you, Ken.
Yeah. You're welcome.
It's interesting he says that, because I can definitely see a middle class and feel a middle class. I mentioned earlier, if you compare us to the 80s, whereby, as I say, you're either rich or poor, there's definitely people who are affording things. Do mention about a salary doubling.
Yeah.
We've also got to be careful and make sure that we factor in inflation in that. 20,000 5 years ago and 40,000 today could probably just buy you about as much as the same thing in that, in terms of strength and what 40,000 could do. So you have got to factor in inflation into that. Of course, it's also important to bring in our cultural sort of ways of living, and remember that a lot of these middle class people also have dependents in terms of how we support our family. Outside your nuclear family, you'll send money home either to your mother, your grandmother, maybe you're educating some siblings and so on. So that's a cultural perspective, but yet it's another expense to factor in. I've got some figures here, or a few statistics that I'm looking at, whereby the OECD report, it shows almost a third of the budget of the average middle income household actually goes to rent. So if you're earning 100,000 after tax at 65,000, a third of that would go to rent. So let's say 25,000.
That's a very responsible household.
Would go to rent.
Many actually go above that.
And then you'll find while food and clothing account for slightly less than a quarter of the budget. So there's a really interesting article here I'm looking at that breaks it down like that, where at the end of the day, this guy has about 15,000, and it says it's to bribe traffic officers and to fuel his car. So this is John, let's say, and he earns 100,000 gross. It goes down to 65,000 after paying taxes. And then you take your rent, food, clothing, car loan and leisure. That takes another 50,000. And he's left with this 15,000. And that's to fuel his car the entire month. Remember, there's also household staff to pay. You want a maid or perhaps a babysitter if you're a family.
You're buying
But there
airtime,
is
you've
also
got a lot of
that
things.
notion of double incomes or two incomes. Remember, before women were staying at home and the man was going out to earn. Now you've got this notion, and it's on the rise, of having two incomes, household incomes in a family. So that's also helping in terms of creating this middle class, in terms of disposable income or amount that each family has to spend. Previously, most women would stay at home. Now there's a lot more opportunity for them to
For
go
them
out
to
there.
be here.
That comes at a cost, both, of course, emotionally and financially. You still have to pay for somebody to look after your child. And
True.
I suppose you miss your baby, no?
I see two things, actually. I see one, we're talking about the spending power of individuals or families, but also the sustainability of it. And maybe that's where the discussion comes in. Is the middle class sustainable?
Does
think
it
that
have to be sustainable?
The fact that there is a middle class, I think there's clear indicators that there is a middle class. For me, the indicators are what we're talking about, the ability to spend on luxury, this consumerism that we have. Even when you're talking about investments, if you look at the growth of the real estate sector, where so many land selling companies have emerged and people have bought land, every place in the country has been subdivided into an eighth. There's a 50 by 100 plot being sold anywhere you go in this day and age. That shows that there's people who are buying those kind of investments. Look at the
fact that it has to be divided into 50 by 100 is indicative of the fact that people can't afford to buy an acre or a half, which is what middle class should be able to do. I'm thinking. So it's being divided into affordable bite-sized chunks.
You see, they look at it as an investment. So whether they actually are able to afford that investment and that land is not cheap. It's not 50,000 shillings. It's upwards of 100K.
Of which you can pay in installments,
and you pay in installments, and not long installments. There'll be maybe 2 or 3 installments of within a year we are done, because it's a commercial entity that's selling and moving on, and the kind of houses that we've seen coming up. I think those are, for me, indicators that, well, because of this, then they clearly is a group of people that are able to spend on this. Now, the question that you asked, just as I finish, the question that you asked is, what would happen if your whatever source of income were to dry out within a month?
Right.
What would happen to you now? I think that's a different question altogether.
You see, the discussion that we are having, there is a study that was actually funded by the African Development Bank. They call the African Lion Sub-Saharan African Study of the Middle Class. Among the things they did was they even came up with a sort of classification for what we are calling the middle class. And what we're discussing here is actually referred to as the floating class, not middle class. They are 2 or 3 months away from poverty. If something happens to you, the question that Nyeri raised, a job isn't there, 2 to 3 months, and you're poor. But again, according to this classification, it's not just a question of the middle class. No. You begin with poor. People whose earnings cannot even be termed into, you can't peg it to $1.
Right.
It doesn't feature. And then you talk about the floating class. They're the ones who are at the spending of $2 a day. Then there is the lower middle class. They're the ones who are at $4. Then
$4
a day. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Then there's the upper middle class. Then they work it at $10 a day. Then there is the upper class, not just upper middle class. They're at $20 a day. Now, this is just classification based on spending. Now, remember, the study that I'm referring to was actually retail-oriented, meaning they were looking at the spending power of people. It wasn't a study by, say, scholars whose interest was in socioeconomic factors, cultural factors. It wasn't that. But this is what they looked at. Now, it's easy to look at the Kenyan society and try and see where you can fit us. Because a lot of what we're saying, a lot of the data that even the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics have, it has to do with that. And I was saying that our spending power often has nothing to do with what we earn. It has more to do with what we can borrow. Because what is aspirational in the middle class is to give the manifestations of it to show that I'm in the middle class. And how do you do that? You own a car. How do you do that? You live in a certain area.
Although what we can borrow is pegged on what we earn. So there is a sort of correlation there. You can't completely isolate it from what we earn.
What we earn, if you are to borrow from fintech, has to do with the amount of activity that particular app
M-Pesa.
has.
Yes.
Yes. They don't.
And remember, those ones are those are low amounts.
No,
We're talking about the lower amounts.
Let's take, for instance, that a fintech can lend you 10,000,
Yes.
for instance, and you can borrow, say, a maximum of 10,
Yes.
isn't it?
Right.
Yes.
And you have 4 of them. You can borrow 40,000. Please
Yes.
remember.
Yes.
So your spending power automatically isn't 40, it's more than 40. Why it's more than 40 is because you're given time in which to pay. Now, if you are clever at these financial gymnastics, as there's this borrowing to pay.
Cycle.
So,
Yeah.
but the reason why you're borrowing is what you had has been spent. So you need to replenish. Now, I'm
You
saying,
borrow to pay, a certain percentage goes into paying, and the other percentage goes into sustaining your bit of
then
your
why
current
do people
lifestyle.
borrow from more than one fintech if that
So
is the case?
for that particular reason, so I borrowed 10,000 shillings. I am not able to pay within 48 hours. I'm not able to pay the 10,000 bob, but I have spent 5,000. So I borrow another 10,000. I pay a bit of this amount, the 5,000. I spend a bit of 2,000. So you are always left with cash in pocket.
So what
as
you're saying is
as
that you
you're
have
repaying.
money in, but you're repaying, but you need something to sustain
Yes.
you as you go along.
Yes, you've got float, so to speak. You've got float with you, so to speak. The phone lines are open 0719 012 600. That's 0719 012 600. The discussion this hour is the Kenya's middle class. And we have seen the report by the FDB that also classified a section of Kenyans as a floating class. Then there's floating class and lower middle class and upper middle class and that. And the conversation is, what kind of class do we actually have in this country and how sustainable is it? 0719 012 600, 11 minutes to 8 o'clock.
Sugar, spice, and everything nice. Alright, okay. Spice it.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM,
I
Nairobi.
think something else we haven't brought into this equation is the stress factor and the psychological impact of these aspirations. We've seen suicide rates going up, and this could be one of the reasons. Of course, also there are the economic challenges that face those who can't meet their basic needs. But in terms of putting pressure on yourself with these loans and borrowing here to repay there, they do drive the stress factor up, which of course also interferes with relationships, and you get people drinking more. So the psychological fallout from this aspiration and this sort of liking us to be called middle class could actually negate from any of the benefits of having this middle class. First of all, it's not sustainable. It's a tightrope we're walking. Of course, it does help the economy. Investors enjoy their money, the Pizza Inns and Pizza Huts and so on. But if you look at what it's doing to us as a society, it could also be what is responsible for the breakdown of our moral fabric, because people are doing anything and everything to get this money to live this aspirational lifestyle that they're seeing their next door neighbors living. It's keeping up with the Joneses. So if it includes being corrupt at work, then so be it. So there is some fallout to this aspiration of being middle class, I think.
But also of interest, these houses that people moved to in the so-called middle class areas, there's been one major complaint. The rooms are tiny.
Right, the small spaces.
Very small.
But you take what you get because you want to remain in that territory, as it were, to be seen as though everything was, all right.
And when they say there's
And that's
parking
the problem.
available for 2
Yeah.
cars, it's actually 1.5 cars.
It's 1.5.
Well, the developer will look to sort of maximize any...
All
The
space
developer
available.
will look to lie to you because now this is where consumer protectionism comes in. What they advertise and what they deliver are two completely
Totally different things.
You do see the
I have
house
Alfred.
before you buy
let's,
it.
let's speak from Alfred. This is Alfred. Alfred in Nairobi, good morning.
Yes, good morning to you.
Good morning.
Yes, I wanted to make a contribution, just a small contribution. I think most Kenyans, they are not middle class. The reason of this is when you look at the middle class, I think most of the time you are looking at what people spend. But in reality, you realize that people do not necessarily spend what they have earned. Most people have loans. And the mobile loans as well as the guys that are working and have access to credit, they can acquire a loan and then they spend this money. So you might think that somebody is middle class, but they are not. Another thing is that what exactly do people spend the money they have on? For example, you can have loan and spend it on gambling. So is that a middle class, or how would you explain that? So the fact is that if you look at the debt that people have, you'll realize that most people have a lot of debt. And some of these debts also have interest on loans that they have taken. And therefore, if you really calculate the net worth of someone, then you realize that this is not a middle class. This is somebody who has already spent money that they have not even earned. Yeah, that's my contribution.
Thank you very much, Alfred.
Of course, the stratification is pinned on how much somebody spends and not their net worth. If we look at the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics, in terms of spending and how you spend it, I don't think that determines your class. Whether you gamble all your money, it's the fact that you have the money to do so. Whether you eat candy with all your money or pizza or gamble it or drink it, it's the fact that you have the money to do so. I think that deems you middle class in this country.
But consider also there is this little aspect. Do people actually save?
Interestingly enough, just looking at I think an ongoing campaign right now, or and research that has been done previously with the Retirement Benefits Authority, just looking at Kenya, for example, and some of the statistics that they were actually able to pull out. 2.9% of the Kenyan population earning a salary between 45,000 shillings and 250,000 shillings are saving.
Are they?
Only.
Oh.
Only.
At least there's somebody saving. It doesn't feel like
only 2.9% of people earning between 40,000 and 250,000 are saving.
And what percentage are they saving of their income?
And now this statistic says that of that 2.9%, they're saving 20% of their earnings, putting it away for a rainy day. And they're actually quite worried because they're saying that Kenyans are actually plummeting towards poverty in the future, that people will retire and they will have nothing to live on. But you do
want people spending money. It's good for the economy. If everybody decided to save, a huge or the majority of their earnings, then it's not good for the economy. You do want money circulating. You do want people spending money. So it's good for the government. It's good for the economy. As for us as individuals, as Kenyans, I think saving is almost old-fashioned. My parents saved. I don't save. I haven't saved. I mean, you put a few insurances in place, perhaps.
And you call that saving.
Actually, you do save.
You invest.
Also, the interest
Those
rates.
insurances
You have
you're talking
more,
about are savings.
That's saving.
You do save.
Well, you have more sort of lucrative ways of saving now. You buy a
Like
piece of land.
investing in real estate,
Yeah,
et
and
cetera.
let that equity grow, as opposed to putting it in a bank. Because what are the rates now in a bank? You're not going to get any more than, say, you would with
Single
government.
digit.
Yeah, and it's government bonds are even more lucrative.
Actually, money in a bank.
City, hold on. Let's go back to the phone lines where we have Lydia calling in from Parklands. Good morning.
Good morning, Spice FM.
Good morning, Lydia.
Good morning. I quickly wanted to say, never laugh at 10 shillings. Just multiply it by 100 and it's 1,000.
Sure.
So, yes. So I would like the tax collector not to be so greedy to cause poverty. And I would like the people wanting to gamble never laugh at even 10 shillings.
Yep.
You will lose 1,000 shillings. I'm in a hurry, so I'll just finish.
Thank you.
Right
Thank
now.
you.
Thank
Have
you
a
very
good
much,
Christmas
Lydia.
if we don't speak to you before then. Have a lovely Christmas.
I'll
Thank you,
try.
Lydia.
I'll try.
Rufus in Nakuru. Good morning.
Good morning, guys.
Good
Morning to you.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yes.
Yeah, how have you been?
Good.
Very well,
Salama
thank you.
kabisa.
Yes, now I want to contribute to this discussion.
Yep.
And my take is, according to what I look at in our economy, is that where are the banks making so much money? And the other parts of the economy, the manufacturing, Nakumatt is closing. We are not getting new supermarkets coming up. That tells you something. That a lot of people are into loans to prove the kind of lifestyle they live. And so is our government. And I believe that the middle class is where you are able to have some money to spend. You maybe have you are able to pay your mortgage without any problem. You are able, or you have already paid your mortgage. You are able to take your kids to school without taking a loan, and you also have disposable. You are saving, and you also have disposable income to have fun, buy a good vehicle.
Yep.
That is what I consider middle class. Now, the biggest problem, in fact, even if you look at these nice restaurants like the KFCs and all that, there are not so many in Kenya. And at the same time, I would want to ask, at what do we measure our middle class from? What is,
Parameters.
how do we define it? Yeah,
It's
the parameters.
defined by the Kenya National Bureau of Statistics as anybody who's spending between 26,000 and 200,000. Spending.
Not taking a loan to spend, right?
It doesn't matter. They don't take that into consideration that you're actually spending the money. Wherever you got it from is a different story altogether. But that you're actually spending this money, whether you earned it or borrowed it.
Well, that's not middle class. Because I believe if you have some money that is not borrowed, that you can spend, and you have all your other things constant,
Yep.
your kids' education, the vehicle you are driving is not borrowed, you are not fueling your vehicle from a credit card. That is my take. That
Thank you.
We do not. Even if we have a middle class, we have a very
small middle class
in Kenya.
Thank you very much, Rufus. We're coming up to the top of the hour, so thank you for your contribution. We've been discussing, of course, the theory of the idea of middle class in Kenya. It's 8 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice it.
Spice up your life. Traffic.
All right. So, like we said, things have actually taken a mess situation. Looking at Jogo Road, it is absolutely bumper to bumper, and that for trying to get into the city centre is not going to be easy in any way, shape, or form right now. All the way in and out, it is a parking lot. The whole of Thika Road today is terrible, and right about now, we see everybody trying to access or get access to the Kenyatta University, where the graduation is happening today. So, in and outbound on Thika Road is also giving us some horrible vibes in terms of how we're not able to move. Huge snarl up is expected in Nairobi and its environs today because we have graduations at Nairobi University, Kenyatta University, Daystar University, Mount Kenya University, Technical University of Kenya, everybody holding a graduation ceremony today. So it's definitely going to affect traffic. Let's take a look in about half an hour how it looks. We'll let you know. But if you can use an alternate route or, stay home at this point, we'll see what will happen and we'll let you know in a short while. Keep it here, 0719 012 600.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Nyeri Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is The Situation Room. The
It's
only
2
way
minutes
to
past
start
8
your
o'clock.
day.
No, it's actually come now to 3 minutes after 8 o'clock. Good morning. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting from Nairobi to Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi. We're also live streaming the show on Facebook, Spice FM KE, on YouTube, Spice FM KE is our channel, and www.spicefm.co.ke. Now, of course, in the last couple of days, we've seen since last weekend the spotlight being shone on our performing artists in the country. Of course, because of that song by King Kaka, Wajinga Nyinyi. And it has brought in the issue of...
Why does it
Why
always
do you
sound
say
like
it
you're
with that
saying
tone?
What?
No,
like
Eric is using this opportunity
He's
to tell
using
us
this
something.
opportunity
Eric,
well.
just come out and say it. What are you saying about us? Exactly.
So what I am saying is Wajinga Nyinyi is the song that was released by King Kaka over the weekend. Of course, he's not the only one. We've seen very many performing artists actually doing the role of activism. One of them is joining us in the studio this morning, and I'm going to play a clip of a speech that she gave, a talk that she gave. This was a TED Talk, and this is what she said.
Between 2004 and 2008, I unsuccessfully tried to get into the Kenyan music industry. But the recurring answer from producers was I was not. Kenya was invented by colonialists in 1895, and with it came the erasure of our identity and a class system built on otherism. So by 1963, when we received our independence, these ideas had already become the new normal. Now, we've tried a lot of different ways to move forward since. We have a common language, currency, infrastructure, basically all the things that make a country a country. But all these efforts at nation building do not go to the heart of the matter, which is this. We cannot build what we do not truly love, and we cannot love until we love ourselves. The thing we have to heal as Kenyans is our lack of self-love, our deep self-hate, and our existential identity crisis. And this is the work of nation building that only the creative industry can do.
This is what she said. Ladies and gentlemen, in the studio joining us this morning on the hot seat is Modoni Drama Queen. Good morning.
Good morning.
Hey, welcome.
Thank you.
And I've got to say that Modoni has come with an entire, she's the queen. So Her Majesty has come with an entire crew that didn't believe that we have cameras in the studio and lights in the studio. So she came with her own cameras. Switch off your lights, please. Use our lights.
So in that instance, we are the otherisms. Huh?
We are the otherisms.
Okay.
You're trying to tell us, so the Spice FM studios, of course, have cameras. We live stream this show every morning. And MDQ has come with her crews because she'd like also to go and, what do you want to do with this footage?
Yeah, so we're making a documentary. There's a small documentary we're doing about me and with another very seasoned journalist. So they wanted to follow me around. I told them I was coming to the Situation Room. They said they have to have that. So here we are.
Good. Welcome.
Thank you.
MDQ and crew. So let's get straight into what you were talking about. Where was this TED Talk? Where did you give this talk?
So I did TED Global at the beginning of the year in April.
Yeah.
And you have to decide what you want to talk about when you're on that platform. And I really just felt like that was a moment to put my thoughts on this Kenyan experiment, together. And I think it's a really valuable and useful place to start for people of my generation to understand what this Kenya needs to mean to us.
And this is what you were talking about. So you talked about how you started out in your career in music.
Yeah.
Of course, people wanted, you wanted to go and produce, and your producers would tell you, nah, this kind of stuff is not what Kenyans want to hear. And this is what you're calling otherism. So because you were different, you were being treated as different.
Yeah. That was my personal experience making music, and there being an idea that there's status quo, right? So if you're not making kapuka music when I started, then your music is not valuable or is not worthy or is not good enough for Kenyans to hear you. And I went into many rooms, many media rooms, where the radio controllers would say to me, Kenyans are not ready to hear a Kenyan who sounds like this. And I always wondered, where did Kenyans write this MOU? Who wrote this letter that says we only want to hear Kenyans who sound like this? And so when I sort of reflect on my own experience, I find that it's not unique to me, right? The state Kenya does otherism to everybody who is not status quo, right? So all the smaller communities in Kenya definitely know what it means to live through otherism, right? Etc. etc. All the disabled people in Kenya know what it means to live through otherism. The system is not designed for anybody who is not status quo.
Is that what you're calling then our self-hate? That because of that we don't love ourselves as Kenyans?
So this one is deep, right? So my first thing that I propose is that the idea Kenya is a colonial creation. It's an invention of some white people somewhere who drew some boundaries and said, from now on, you guys are a country. And those boundaries, it didn't matter that, for example, communities were separated, that the Maasai were separated, that the Somali were separated, the Luo. It didn't matter. It was just like, now you guys are Kenya, right? And then the next thing that they had to do was, we have to replace you. For colonialism to work, you have to replace the people that you're going to colonize. So you say, your names, Jerry, Muthoni, those are not good enough. Now you have to drop those names that and pick up the white people's ancestors who have nothing to do with you. You have to drop your language and use the white man's language, because this is the language that's going to make you worthy. And if you do this, we will reward you. We have to teach you to be afraid of the person who lives next to you, right? Because it's easier if you're not united, if you don't gang up. And then the colonialists left, and they left those structures. And then we inherited them, and we continue them. So there is no Kenyan, for example, in my generation.
Did the colonialists actually leave?
That's a good question. I don't think they did. I think they found ways to stay, and the ideas and the separation and the hatred that they sowed, because it's really important that the people do not see themselves as one.
Your debate is real, and there are many people who would agree with you. I am the oldest person in this room, so every time I talk, I have to refer to the century in which I have spent most of my life, which is the previous century. Okay. Ngugi wa Thiong'o and other people of his ilk, people who at that point in time belonged to the Department of Literature at the University of Nairobi, had exactly the same views as you. Now, I mention Ngugi because he went forth and actually wrote books about this. Really delightful literature. And when you say the status quo hasn't changed, again, you are right. I would add a little anecdote to yours and say it has worsened. Because now the image of the oppression that we speak of is by our own people on our own people.
Absolutely.
Yes. And I believe that the generation you speak of, or the generation you say you belong to, is actually the right generation to actually speak about it forcibly, because a generation like mine were a bit confused. We had parents who had struggled with trying to fit into the white man's shoes, and then came us who are now struggling to emulate the white man in every way possible. And indeed, the otherism that you speak of was determined very much, often by just the language and how you delivered it. If you're unfortunate enough to have a heavy influence of your mother tongue when you speak this borrowed language, woe betide you. I agree. Solution: who should we kill?
Now, if you're asking me seriously,
I'm asking you not seriously.
Okay. I just want to be sure.
Wow. you have an answer to that as well?
You were ready for that?
Like I said.
All right, so let's start with the not serious one, and then you give us a serious answer.
So I think that anybody and anything that has interacted with the political class from independence to now, all of it has got to go. All of it, across the divide.
Scotch death policy.
All of it. All of it. All of it is rotten.
Including
all of it has
Kenyatta
benefited.
International Conference Center.
All of it. Everything, anything, and any, as at least all the human beings who have been in this system between independence and now.
All the human beings.
All the political class.
Let
the
her
whole,
continue. This one is going to be interesting.
The whole political class.
She's beginning to sound like Jerry Rawlings, but carry on. Yes.
The whole political class, the whole political institution is rotten. It is based on ideals that cannot progress our country forward. Us guys are the ones who are going to sit here with this country for the next 40, 50 years. We are the ones who are going to dig ourselves out of this debt that we have now inherited, that has produced zero benefits for us. We are the ones who are going to have to figure out, or we are the ones who have now figured out in our life, actually it doesn't matter if you're a Luo or you're a Luya or you're a Kisi or you're a Kikuyu, you're just a person, right? There's nobody in my generation who wasn't told by their parents, at least all the girls I know, you can bring anybody here except... There's nobody. There's
Right.
literally nobody in Kenya who has that experience. So we are the first generation to contend and tell our parents, oh well, tough. We are the first generation also who are like, but maybe I'll just do the thing I like to do because also singing is a thing. I understand it's not being a lawyer, but oh well, tough. Right? So I just find that there's nothing of the political class and there's nothing of the political system that exists that mirrors our aspirations or our ideas. This thing is just like who can get in, who's pal, who's crony, what can get done. So I think in a non-serious way,
The
if we were
bloods.
saying who do we put in a bus and ship off to China, every single person who belongs to the current political class, all of them,
Even the ones who belong to this generation, to
all
your generation.
of them, Akina Babu Owino,
Mm.
all of them,
They've been tainted. Eh?
all of them.
But
They've
who
been
put
tainted.
them there?
This is the good question. And that's the good question. Because we have an electoral system that we don't believe. So who did?
No. In terms of that,
What's your theory? Are you saying that
Who
the
did?
system
Who did?
sucked them in?
The,
We did
the
actually put them there?
politicians told us that the election was stolen amongst themselves.
Mhm.
So somebody stole it. We didn't. We did our thing, right? Us guys went into dilapidated classrooms.
And cast a piece of
And then
paper
after
into
we cast a piece of paper, all of them said, some of them said it was stolen, it was not stolen, it was contested, it was not contested. So who chose them? Your answer is as good as mine.
I think you'll find where I was leading to is maybe they're reflective of the society that we do live in. So maybe they were actually chosen by the people. Of course, people don't believe in the fairness. We have people who don't believe in the electoral process for one reason or another. But you mentioned Babu Owino. He was also very popular at university. So whatever it is you don't like about him, perhaps is what people recognize in him as part of themselves. So I feel he's a reflection of the society.
I certainly think that there's truth to you know what you're saying, and one of the things that we keep hearing all the time is that you get the leaders that you deserve, right? Because these people don't come from the sky; they come from your midst, right? But I would contend that nobody in Kenya actually wanted leaders who steal, who actively go out of their way to fan ethnic hatred, who would prefer to resort to violence, who have no actual vision for the country. I would contend that. I would contend that if you ask somebody, this guy that you are choosing, what did you want? What did you really want to happen for you? Most people will say they just want to have a good life, a fair shot at creating something good for themselves, to bring up their children in a situation that's going to create a better life for them.
So let's say that we swept everybody out.
Yes.
What would be the solution then? And where are we getting now these...
She was waiting for that question.
Right?
What next?
Where are we getting these almost superhuman beings then
They're
now who are
within
going
us.
to do that? Are they? Okay.
They're within us, right? So I think the first thing is to have the conversation amongst ourselves as Kenyans about what is leadership. So I would contend, right, that if you are in your Geshagi there, in Matasia, in Olkejuado County, in Westlands, wherever it is that you are, right? The woman who goes to visit the sick and take care of the disabled and who is normally convening, that's your women's rep. That's your MCA. That's what leadership is about. It's actually like stepping out and fixing the thing in the place that you are.
Yep.
I would say that the way the leadership conversation has been framed in Kenya is in such a way that all the options are meant to be coming from the political class. I'm contending that it should be absolutely nobody from the political class. Jerry can 100% be a leader for Nairobi.
But I then become the political class.
Correct. But then the political class, but you're not a politician. So you're not going in for politics. She is a politician. Next person, Eric Latif.
Everyone in this room is a politician.
And politicians, and in itself, politics isn't a bad thing, right? The discourse of the nation in itself is not,
It's
a,
not
bad thing. It's actually something that should be very encouraged. I just got off tour in France. Literally everybody in France talks about leadership, governance all day long. Everybody.
So they're just like us.
Everywhere. They are obsessed. They are worse than us. Everything on TV
Who's
is
their
just
Waitito?
like guys talking,
Who's their
talking,
Sonko? Who's their-
talking, right? So I didn't get the sense of like who the actors are. What was interesting for me is to see how empowered people feel about the idea of their nation, about the ideas of their life, right?
You're talking about France. I was thinking you'd probably have given an example of Italy, where something similar has is actually taking the country by storm, and it's with your generation. Something that began as just a group of people chit-chatting.
Yeah.
Now it has gained momentum.
Yeah.
Yes, and they're actually challenging the political class
a
in the
firestorm
most
now.
peaceful way possible. But the political class is actually being challenged.
And it's being shaken. I've heard you talking about the system, because I think that's from where you started. Even you're saying we go into an election, but the system sort of takes over what our choices are. Even if we took these people and got them into a bus and took them to whatever country we want to
China.
take them to. All right, so China.
China.
Southern
had,
China.
had concentration camp, go work off our debt.
Southern China, right?
The choice destination for such things, I think,
Siberia?
resides. My thoughts. That's the choice place for rehabilitation.
Best place, right?
Yes.
Then what do we do with the system? Because the people have gone, yes,
Yeah.
but we can replace the people if we don't replace the system.
Yeah.
And what's wrong with the
Yeah.
system? How do we
Yeah.
fix the system,
And
in
I,
your opinion?
Yeah, and I think that's really valuable, and I think that's also one of the things that you had intimated, Jerry, because there's a question here about how do we understand power? Okay, first step one, how do we understand this thing called Kenya? Which is what I think is the first step. How do we understand this thing called Kenya? I understand Kenya as a group of people who predate Kenya. We've been here, we've been legendary, we've been doing things, we've been dope for such a long time. This idea of Kenya is 100 and something old. We've been here 6 million years. The Kenyans on the coast built dhows and have been trading with the Indian Peninsula from about 1400. We built that, we invented that. We've been here doing great things. Kikuyus and Maasais have a long-standing tradition of how they've interacted, for example. Right? And all this, like, even in wartime, the rights that were given to women, there was very elaborate ways in which communities have interacted. We've been great. The state is actually the one that has reduced the greatness of people.
It's the state.
The state has actually reduced the greatness of people because the state was designed to extract from the people. This thing was invented so that white people could get here, take your resources, extract things out of the ground, right? Take them to their countries to enrich themselves. Then it's like, cool, we're now going to hand over to a bunch of people who are going to continue with this idea of taking.
But remember also, this bunch of people are not entirely unkind. They have given us a platform on which we can discuss them and tell them how bad we think of them or how low we think of them. The very concept of evolution, if you're talking about cultures and the social aspect of people's lives, unfortunately, it's never complete without interaction with other people and with other realities.
Indeed.
Yes. So,
and I think that we've been doing that.
yes.
It is actually the state that came and imposed on us and said, you can't move here without a kipande. Kenyans had been trading with each other.
True.
Kenyans had been designing, Kenyans had been intermarrying, Kenyans had been working. Before they were called Kenyans, they already existed. So my first step is, if we're going to talk about this system, we have to go to ground zero.
Already, the people who fought for independence were at ground zero. That's what they were fighting against.
No, Eric, they weren't at ground zero. The people who were fighting for independence were saying, Mbeberu atoke. But they didn't understand that ata Mbeberu akitoka and the system that allows, right, the Babeberu will just be replaced by Kenyan Wabeberus. So for me, I'm like, in the first place, right, we get to a point of consensus that we are greater than this thing called Kenya. And so if we are going to continue to be in this thing called Kenya, it has to work for the people who are then called Kenya.
Okay, we'll continue this conversation when we come out of this short break. We allow Muthoni, the drama queen, to have a sip of water as she comes up to tell us about this system called Kenya and how we fix Kenya in her opinion. She's talking about this generation of Kenyans is the one that has the power. She sees very many problems. Well, let's discuss whether those problems are real or imagined as well. It's 23 minutes past 8 o'clock. This is Kenya's biggest conversation, The Situation Room on Spice FM.
Spice and everything nice, everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life.
The Kenyan summer is right around the corner, and Blankets and Wine is here to celebrate it with not one, but 2 editions. Join us on December 22nd and toast to the year that was with reggae phenomenon Coffee, South African house finest Sunel, Kenyan sensations Fena, Soul Generation, and many more. Then start the new year with our big vibe on January 5th with Grammy-nominated superstar Gold Link, Kenya's finest Blinky Bill, Karun, and lots more artists. Season pass is at 3,500 and advance tickets at 3,000 per show. Available on blanketsandwine.com. Both events at Ngong Racecourse from noon onwards. In partnership with Timeless Events and Occasions, Parapet Cleaning, Kenya Association of Manufacturers, Securix, the Nairobi Flea Market, Boomplay, and Vibes Radio. Link up and toast with us.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
The idea of Kenya as a nation, the idea of Kenya as a state, as a people, is one that has also been captured. Actually, this conversation has been captured in the BBI report. Remember, the BBI report actually pointed this out. We have a country that has certain boundaries, but do we feel like we're all one as Kenya? And that's what part of the conversation that Muthoni, the drama queen, is raising this morning. Otherism, and talking about the system itself. So we've gone back to the system at independence, where the colonial system stayed in place and new people came and just took over that system. And you feel that for us to sort ourselves out, we've got to burn everything to the ground and build once again from down up, right?
Yeah.
How do we rebuild the system if you were to bring it down?
Okay. So first I want to make very clearly, I'm not here for banning of things. There's a lot of talk now on Twitter about how we should have revolutions. I'm just like, my guy, women and children are the casualties of revolutions. I have no interest in going to fight a state that maintains its complete monopoly of violence, legally so. I don't want any Kenyan to stand in front of another Kenyan and have to be in a situation where you could be shot or killed. Enough people have already died for Kenya. Enough dying. So that's one of the fundamental positions of my generation. Enough dying. So this thing is going to have to be peaceful. So that means we're going to have some consensus.
Right.
We have to ask ourselves, how do you design something that produces the greatness of the people? If this thing is not about the greatness of the people, you have failed. If the thinking isn't about how do people have the best version of life possible, it has failed. The next group of leadership, if we are not aggressively thinking about, right, we are now putting a timer. We have 40 years to get ourselves out of this crap debt that we are in. So these are the actual plans that we are going to make. Then it's not going forward, right? If we have a system that isn't asking, how do you make access and human dignity the fundamental of leadership, of governance, then we're not going forward.
Well, why not the people themselves? So you're saying that the people have got to lead. What's the role of actually identifying the people and bringing the people in here? Because you're saying this system has led us to a situation where you feel as a country, as a nation, we have a lot of self-hate. We cannot heal ourselves if you don't heal our deep self-hate. We've got an existential identity crisis. It's about the people. It's not necessarily the system or the government.
So, Eric, to start with, you can't love yourself until you know who you are, right? I had real problems being a Kikuyu until I did some reading. There's a wonderful anthropology on the Kikuyu people before 1890. For me to understand that the Kikuyu people were great and interesting and dope, and that they were interacting and that there was...
What is dope?
Dope is fly.
What is fly?
Right? Until I saw the images of what it looked like to be a Kikuyu woman in the 1850s. I was like, how come this stuff looks like this Maasai stuff? And like really reading. Okay, so this was the treatment of women during war, for example, with Maasais. Okay, these were the treaties that were done. Until I understood what it meant to be a Kikuyu, I had real problems being a Kikuyu.
I want to go to, when you look at any kind of change that has come on, if you want to look around the world, there had to have been a change in the way people think.
Absolutely.
Now, are we there? Are Kenyans there yet when we say, okay, are Kenyans bothered to the point whereby we say, talking about the greatness that you speak of, and say, are we bothered to the point whereby if any kind of change that I'm going to see, whether it is in governance or in the economic turnaround of this country, etc., because I mean, there are quite a number of things that need some change. Has that conversation taken place in the mental framework of people to then say, we have thought about it and this is where our minds are? Because a lot of the revolution, a lot of the change that we've seen around the world was at the point where a mental shift had already taken place.
So, and I think that what we're witnessing now, and why you saw everybody sort of rallying around Kaka, and when I did Kenyan Message a few years ago, is because people want to have this conversation. There's a certainty. We are definitely sure what is happening isn't working. We are definitely sure that nothing is working. Okay. So then it's our job as people who have a voice, artists, media people, to say, so what could be the alternative?
And what in your
my
view,
alternative,
what is the alternative?
My alternative is to first tell people that they are great. You speak to the good in the people. You tell people that they are great and that they are worthy and they are deserving and that they are intelligent and that they don't get to delegate their right to a great life to some person to hopefully give them this great life.
How do you tell them this?
Exactly that way. You say it in song. You say it in plays. You say it in literature. You show them.
You speak greatness to them and at them.
And you show greatness. And we know it. How come when there's a race, what's that thing that all Kenyans feel? Why do we cry? And us, we're not the ones racing and we're not eating the race money. When 159 was happening, what was that thing? Even now talking about it still gives me goosebumps. What was that thing? That thing of seeing like, man, we are so dope. When Kenyans are left to their own devices.
Dope city.
They are dope. They are dope and fly.
When Kenyans are left to their own devices, they are highly innovative.
Yep.
They are highly creative. They are highly, highly compassionate. And they are great. And Kenyans long for greatness. The thing that makes us cry when we see the runners running is greatness. You see it. You see greatness. You see somebody's work and somebody's effort coming to fruition. You see somebody's dream fulfilling in real time. Now, you might not have the language in that moment, but you know that feeling.
And actually, you can claim a bit of it simply by virtue of being in the same geographical area as that person.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And the reason why we honor it so much is because if it is possible for this guy from some corner of a place called Iten, which you've never gone, can have that thing, so can it be for you. And you have to speak greatness to people. And then you have to show people greatness. So I'll give an example. Men, Kenya should dress well. We should just dress well. Right? To dress well means that you have to have a fashion industry. To have a fashion industry means you need to have raw materials. Right? To have raw materials means, for example, cotton isn't viable. Grow hemp. Right? Use hemp so hemp I mean that. I 100% mean that. White people are the ones who decided that hemp is illegal because they could not find a way to control it.
Actually, some people smoked it. That was part of the problem.
They've been smoking it for a long time. Hemp's been here for a long time. It only became political when there was a question about how do you monetize this thing. And now, when they've decided actually maybe we can monetize this thing and maybe there's enough science to prove that this thing is good, now it's not illegal.
That's being mainstreamed again.
Now it's not illegal. So now Zambia is growing it, Malawi is growing it, Uganda is doing a test of it with prisoners. So I would say, So I would say, for example, it's just a hypothesis and I don't need to be right. But this is me saying that I can have a hypothesis about Kenya as a Kenyan. And I don't need a politician to give me this hypothesis. Grow hemp. If you grow hemp, there's a bunch of farmers who are going to get direct income. There's some jobs that are going to be created here. All these people who are importing mutumba, maybe we put them together into a cooperative and give them a 5-year tax break, and maybe the government meets that so that we can actually have factories that are able to process this raw material, right? All this my generation, all these guys who are just like designing tailors, Kenya is full of tailors, put people in factories, right? Make fly clothes. Sell fly clothes.
I hear you resonating then with the Big Four agenda, because I think this is one of the. I see you, but what you're saying is manufacturing. Because we're saying that if we're trying to take the country forward, then these are some of the things that we should focus on. Now, are you saying that it is not possible to move forward with the current crop of leadership that we have?
Absolutely.
And some of these things that we need to have done in the country is not possible to be with the leadership in place today?
So, I agree. One of my big arguments, or not arguments, but one of my big positions is, for example, that entertainment is an industry, a legit manufacturing industry. In the same way, cement manufacturing is a legit industry because you are creating ideas for export and for local consumption. You create real value and real worth, right? I agree that manufacturing has to happen, but manufacturing has to be centered on the people, not for capitalist gains. That there is a capitalist gain is secondary to the fact. The fact is the people are dignified by work. Work has dignity. The people are dignified when they wear clothes that they themselves made. Then you're able to sell that idea. When we say fashion, sorry, I really mean this. Because also when I was working in Paris, I'm like, what's this deal that we've been sold to our whole life by movies? Paris is the fashion capital. Do you know that is literally what France sells? They sell us their culture. They say it's the city of romance, Paris. It's the city of romance and the fashion capital of the world. What does that actually mean? That's an idea that people invented about themselves. When Americans say that they are the land of the brave, the home of the brave, the home of the free and the land of the brave, that's just an idea that they created about themselves, right? And then they built monuments and icons that they have then sent to every corner of America and every corner of the world, in movies, in videos. So the first time I saw the Lincoln Memorial and the White House, I knew exactly what I was looking at. Why do I know that? Why do I know American iconography? Because I watched it on a show. Because somebody put this image in my mind. For years and years, they have told me that they are the democracy. And so we can sell these ideas about ourselves. Our greatness can be told to the children through film, through TV, through fashion. Those are the ideas that we can say of ourselves.
Every idea needs a leader. Every idea needs a leader at the head of it. It needs somebody to drive it. So yes, there'll be followers. Yes, there'll be people who also believe in what you're saying. But I believe that leadership is important. And now I think let's come back and talk about now that as well, the leadership. Some of the things that you're talking about are things that we've discussed for days on end on this show. Talking about how to feel proud of ourselves, our iconography and all. These are things that we've actually discussed. And it's good to hear you saying the same thing. Now let's talk about how do we actually actualize that. 23 minutes to 9 o'clock. Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life.
As predicted, things are not looking good at all. Hope the Enterprise Road should have been open today, but that is not happening. We see that they say the 24th, which is next week actually, but that is causing quite a lot of traffic on Gong Road because everything leaving industrial area trying to get into the city center then is coming via Jogo Road. And as predicted, all roads now seem to be at a gridlock from Wayaki Way to Huru Highway. Kipande Road chock-a-blocked because of the graduation that's taking place at the University of Nairobi. So that is not happening right now. Thika Road inbound, outbound, because all roads lead to Kenyatta University as well, where graduation is taking place. Kangunda Road also is quite a mess. 47th graduation happening at the Kenyatta University. The traffic jam on Thika Road today is epic, is what we are being told, and this is going to probably carry on through the day, and we'll see remnants of such well into the morning. So if you're stuck there, that's what's going on. You need to take it easy. If you haven't left, probably not a good idea to do so. See if you can work remotely today. 0719-012-600 is the number to call. If you see an alternative that we can spread the word about, do let us know, and we'll do just that.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
The drama queen is in the studio with us on the hot seat this morning. Of course, this is the situation room, Kenya's biggest conversation. MDQ says Kenyans have a self-hate. Kenyans do not really understand what makes them Kenyans. Kenyans have an existential identity crisis, and we have time to fix it. She's talking about her own generation taking the reins on this.
You know, there are those who argue, Eric, that with every generation, what is conceived to be a new idea is actually an idea that's new to that generation, but the idea in and of itself is actually not new. Because what we're discussing was discussed in the previous generation at independence, and the terminology was neocolonialism. And the debates raged on this particular subject. More interestingly, books were written.
Yep.
Two people stand out. One was speaking against neocolonialism in the Francophone countries, another one in the Anglophone countries. Ndu, you'll help me with this last. The name is spelled Jean, so I'm likely to pronounce it Jean, and I suspect it isn't pronounced that way.
Jean, no.
Thank you. Paul is just Paul, isn't it?
Yes.
Then the other name is written Sartre.
S-A-R?
Sartre, with a
Sartre.
S-A-T-R. Yeah, okay, that fellow. Jean-Paul.
Sartre.
Yes. He waxed very eloquently on this particular subject. And he was referring specifically to the mental enslavement of people because of what the drama queen refers to as colonialism.
Colonialism.
Yes, because if someone imbues on you this attitude of liking other things other than your own, they're actually imbuing in you a hatred for your own. The things work hand in hand. Now, there's a gentleman we all know, 1965, Kwame Nkrumah, the late Kwame Nkrumah. Now, he spoke about this and wrote about it extensively. He even took it further. He and other leaders, like-minded leaders like himself, Jomo Kenyatta, but Mbio Koinange was actually at the heart of this. They began Pan-Africanism.
Right.
Now, remember, a new generation came along, spearheaded by the late Libyan leader, and they were angling for the same thing. Now, the Pan-African debate has been on stage for the longest time possible.
True.
It's what made it possible for the Organization of African Union to actually exist.
Yep.
But I'm saying this because I like this idea, because this generation isn't sitting back and sleeping and saying, yes, okay. They're saying, fine, the problems may have been spoken of, but they still exist.
Right. How far do you think people need to go, Muthoni? I'm looking around the world. If you just want to look at the Arab Spring, for example, it's young people who are sitting in Tahrir Square. It's young people that were in other countries. So, I mean, to say that, look, they said, and because of certain things that happened, if we look at Chile, for example, the protests that have been going on for the last 6 months, if you want to look at Hong Kong, it is young people that, took stage in the airports. It it is something that needed to break after the mental shift took its position, and then something physical needed to have been manifested to say, now we've thought about it, now we are doing something about it. We often talk about the fact that we talk a lot. We talk at things, we talk to things, we talk and hope that this talking will do some kind of miraculous intervention. But without something actually being done, then it is useless at best. Now, what needs to be done for us to cross over from, we know that, it's been agitated over time. Just like CT has said, we saw Pan-Africanism take place. We saw Gaddafi come in and he said we needed to have formed the OAU. We've seen other leaders come in and say, okay, then we formed the OAU, and then now we have a lame duck sitting like the African Union, for example. So what actually needs to be done to say, okay, this is it? Do we need people sitting in the streets? Do we need people agitating?
Yeah. So, Man, I really appreciate your question and the perspective that you've both brought to the conversation. And to answer you very simply, what needs to be done? Step one, radical truth-telling. Our generation is going to have to say some radical truths about Kenya. All the things that happened to our parents' generation that have never been addressed. The Wagala massacre has never been addressed. There has never been a public apology. The state brutalized its people. Every election in Kenya has resulted in the death of Kenyans since 1992. Radical truth-telling. Who did that? Who stole which land? Why are people being thrown out of Mau? How did people even end up being in Mau? Who created a T-zone? Who continues to benefit? There is no getting around it. And this is the thing about Kenyans. We know, but we try to hope that maybe you can get around things without just being honest. Radical truth-telling. We owe ourselves very many apologies. We owe ourselves very many sorries. Radical truth-telling. So I think that one of the things that our generation keeps being accused of is being Twitter activists. I'm like, there's nothing more important right now than to have a conversation. The conversation will heal the nation. We don't get to act like the things that happened didn't happen. Number two, radical truth-telling about leadership in this country. For since the beginning of this country, leadership has been political. The thing that we have seen from 1960 whatever is politicians will always act in their own interest. One of my favorite heroes of Kenya, Tom Mboya. By the time Tom Mboya was dying, he was 32. All those things that Tom Mboya did in his whole life were in his 20s. But even my favorite Kenyan hero, when it came down to it, to settle a score with Jaramogi, him and Sir Charles Njonjo changed the constitution to reduce the role of the vice presidency. The thing that we have understood from politicians is politicians will always act in the interest of politicians.
So how much of this talk do you want us to have? And then how do we actualize the talk? Because yes, talking is happening. You've seen about it. You tweet about it. We talk about it on air.
Yeah.
How do we actualize that moving forward?
So now, and this has been the fun thing for me to watch in the creatives. So, for example, these things about Tom Mboya, I didn't know. I didn't know because nobody taught me who Tom Mboya was. The history glossed over him. I went for a play, Too Early for Birds, a Tom Mboya edition. And for 3 hours, I understood what it meant to have been Tom Mboya. I understood what it meant to make a workers' union. I understood his whole life. I understood the flaws of the man. I was like, got it. This should be compulsory watching. For all Kenyans, those should be the set books.
So we retell our history.
We have to tell it, but radical truth-telling. We don't get to tell the parts that we like and the parts that we don't like. Because when you tell the truth, all Kenyans are going to agree overwhelmingly. The cancer of this country has been the idea that some people think that they can continue to apportion to themselves, to manipulate, to divide, to conquer. Number 3, the leadership is us. That guy that you think knows so much actually doesn't know so much. Because me, I have an idea. Jerry has an idea. Eric has an idea. So everybody should start discussing. I don't need to be right about hemp, but I am absolutely right about a fashion industry. So now everybody needs to have a discussion like that. Because the more we discuss the things that we want, the more reason we have to make a radical decision about the thing that we are not going to do anymore.
Right. So I hear you saying that with what you have in your hand, you can actually do something about the situation. That's what I hear you saying.
A lot.
What are you doing with the platform that you have in terms of now seeing how some of these changes can be made?
So For example, I have been very vocal on my platforms since before the last election. I made music, I made art pieces saying exactly this. When I went onto a certain TV show, we had a really interesting and thoughtful conversation with a journalist where I kept saying all of the system has to go. Don't vote for the lesser evil. Don't vote for evil. Just don't vote for evil. If you're voting for evil, it's going to come and backfire against you.
Don't vote at all because it's in the system.
But by not voting, you actually are voting.
Exactly, because we're playing their game. What people then said, what I noticed in the comment section of that conversation, and it's still there on YouTube, is people understood my guy is cool. The other guy is very bad. We agree with you to the extent that it's the other guy, otherism. So I'm saying all of ism, all of them, there is no good guy. If you have been involved in the political system in Kenya between independence and now, all of it out. I use my platform to tell people that. I use my platform to tell people greatness. I use my platform to show people greatness.
There are those that will lump you with the others as well. There are those that will look at you and see, well, you've joined the political class, you're having a political discussion, you're part of them. So we talk about all of ism. I think we need to reduce and say those that have done this and the other.
Actually,
because
what we're
there are people who have
discussing
come
now-
in here and they meant to do what you're talking about. They meant to change things. They actually want to change things. But when you say get everybody out, even everybody who's in
These
the
are murky
conversation.
waters because what we're discussing now is not colonialism, we're discussing imperialism. You see, when you force your sovereignty on another person, that is now imperialism. Now, we in Africa talk about it as though the Europeans began by coming. They didn't. They practiced on their own first. For instance, if you look at Great Britain, one of the first countries to be colonized by the English was Ireland. If you look at Italy, if you look at Germany, you hear of great names of people like Garibaldi, Bismarck, and they're known for unifying. What do you think they were doing? They were imposing, that's what they were doing. They were imposing the rule of one particular part of that particular, what became then the country, into one unit, and it dominated. They simply exported this view. Now, if you look at the debate we have in this country, Kenya, at the moment, and the debate with the political class, the general debate is that the political class have imposed this imperialism on the citizenry who have elected them. Okay, now we're calling it a form of colonialism, and we could. Now, Drama Queen is eloquent on this subject, and I like what she's saying because she's passionate about it. But for there to be actual change, there needs to be structure. There needs to be a clear path, not just spoken of, written down, with clear responses, because for everything you want to change, there'll be a structure that makes it exist. Now, what will be your structure for de-imperializing or decolonizing this entire system that we see?
So that's a really good question. I don't know that I have...
That's part one. There's part two.
There's part two. So, I don't know that I have your answer. I do know that the place where we are right now is we're in the part called Speak Truth to Power. Because we don't get to move forward until we agree on the way that we're moving forward. So one of the reasons I have been, for example, very eloquent on my platform is because until we get to the point where we're like, yeah, actually Kenyans are great. We deserve better. We can do better. In fact, we've been doing better. Right? So this system has failed us because we were already doing dope. So we should be further ahead.
And in that
with hemp.
I'm actually in agreement with
for
you.
Example.
Yes, for example, hemp. But what I'm saying is that, remember the generational statement I made about the truth and the newness of an idea for generation is new to that generation. Even in the generation that isn't your own, you'd be amazed at how many people who think exactly the way you think.
The difference, I suppose, is because our generation is desperate. In your generation, our parents tell us how they came to Nairobi University. We see their pictures, how they wore miniskirts. They used to be given, things. Life was great. Life was grand.
It was.
Okay? In my generation, we have debt. We have graduates on the street with placards. You have, in this election for the first time, 52% Kenyans are going to be under 18 and less from 2022. Right?
Yes.
So things are desperate. When people are desperate measures desperate times call for desperate measures.
It is usually prudent if they are tampered with some realism.
Right.
And that realism is what we are trying to, I'm trying to present here, or we are trying to present here, because the sentiments will find resonance. There's no question about it. There's need for change. And there are people who have been speaking about it for the longest time. That's why we have a very, very vibrant and active group of people who are referred to in this country as activists. You may not believe this, but you fall into that category now. You've become an activist.
I guess.
Yes. Okay. And alongside this, there have been NGOs who support it. And then there's the media that is referred to as the fourth estate. So it isn't that the views are not supported. For the longest time, the problem has been, how exactly do you go about this change that you are speaking of? Because you correctly put it, this cancer, it has taken root. It's part and parcel of our system.
Way of life. It is.
So the cure cannot be a pill. It does require surgery, but it has to be a surgery that can actually heal.
And this is why I'm suggesting, and I completely agree with everything that you're saying, but I'm suggesting that the corrective mechanism, the first corrective mechanism, is you just have to speak the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Because this is the thing that has not happened so far. We speak the things that are convenient to speak about. When we speak too much truth, we are brutalized.
That I actually
So
would
there's
agree.
and
there's the issue
other
of
thing is
how to also say the truth.
Yes, how to speak it.
How to speak it.
There's a manner in which if you speak it, the backlash will be profound.
And it doesn't matter whatever generation you belong to.
Yes.
Even your own generation,
Yes.
there's some truth you don't want to be told in a certain way.
Yeah.
I mean, the language of communication is as crucial as the information
content that you want to
contained
put
in
Which
it.
is why there was such uproar, because, Kaka had the audacity to say, wajinga how? Wajinga nyinyi. Right? Because in our generation, we're like, radical truth-telling. It's highly uncomfortable to say to somebody, wajinga nyinyi.
But by the way, you may
It's
find
highly uncomfortable.
You may find this strange, but if you grew up in Mombasa as I did, you will find that is normal conversations.
Normal.
Somebody calling somebody mshenzi, mjinga, normal.
Pumbafu.
It's not even considered an insult.
Indeed. But
Yes.
I didn't grow up in Mombasa. I grew up in Nairobi. I grew up in a ghetto in Nairobi.
And
then we
mjinga was an
moved to...
insult.
Yes, then we moved to somewhere in Matasia. I came back to Nairobi for uni. So that, in very many households, it's like, why could he not just say? That's one of the sentiments I've seen a lot from an older generation. Why could he just say this
pretending
thing?
to be proper for you.
Yeah.
And again, that's a nuance that you must understand is Kenyan.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
And that is the nuance that you must understand that also determines our church attendance. That is the nuance that you must also understand determines how we believe we should behave in public.
So I think, to be quite honest, this idea about how do we create the change is a very valuable question. But I think the question that predates that is, what is the thing that requires to be changed? And that's that's where we are right now. Imagine for Kenyans to be at a point where they're finally agreeing that maybe this tribalism thing doesn't work.
It's never worked.
Yeah, but people didn't believe
Except
that.
for a politician.
Yeah, but people didn't believe that.
So
Actually,
everything
not
must
didn't.
go.
They still don't. They still don't. You see, the issue of tribalism isn't an isolated issue. It's part and parcel of the way we think of who we are. It is. So, and oddly enough, the full manifestation of it is only after every 5 years. When we have an election is when suddenly we are really, really tribal and we are really, really, really cocooned. In everyday life, if you ask me in my generation,
we are good.
Not only good, we refer to each other by their communities, and it isn't derogatory even.
Yeah.
It's just
That,
conversational. It's when the element of trying to be proper came in that the issue of tribalism actually blew up.
course.
Because now you wondered, but hey,
This is how we've always done it.
Yes.
Right.
And that's what actually King Kaka is also reflecting in his song. He says, during election time is when I realized, so and so is actually belongs to this tribe. Before that, I'm okay
Never
with dealing
thought
with
about
this
it.
person.
It doesn't
Never thought
really-
about it. It never comes up.
and even if it does, it doesn't come up in a way
Negatively.
that is negative. Not really. You see,
I mean, unless, you're being told, unaweza leta mtu accept. We live with tribalism.
it is a reality that the political class, again, this one is a political class that one has to blame for this. Because they want to ensure that they retain the positions that they have. And remember, our political class And our economic class, industrial class, they're really not that different. They belong to more or less the same club.
Yeah.
They are the ones who furthered this. And because when you further it, you guarantee that you have a support base, your own, watu wako, who speak your language. That has been the story. Now, are you telling me that what you're trying to say is you want to dismantle this particular framework? That's what you're saying.
What I'm saying is I'd like to dismantle the thinking. And you cannot dismantle the thinking without bringing new thinking. And this is like fundamentally the thing, right? What Kaka wanted us to do in having this song is to have the moment of reflection, to think differently.
Right.
So this is the work for me of the artist, is to create not to create a new way, to present a new way of thinking. And I say new in quotes because you're right. Is this really new thinking? I don't think it's really new thinking.
Well,
Just
I think
new communication of the same thinking.
It's the same thinking, but I think also then requires a different way.
Absolutely.
In which things then need to get
a new approach.
A new approach to this, yes, absolutely.
So I think, for example, right, instead of spending all our entertainment time on TV watching movies from
West,
Philippines, and India, and etc., we should be watching our own films. We should be watching our own stories. We should build our own icons.
You do remember that we do have this particular issue of content was raised in Kenya, and media houses are required to actually. It's not at a choice. You must air. Is it 40% or is it
right now? It's 40%.
40% local content. So it's there. So you're saying we should push it to 60.
I'm saying
make it 100.
We should be at 80. This thing is radical.
Actually, start with 100.
Let me tell you, 100. And let me tell you, when you look at in my sector in music, there was a golden era of music, right? Which we are now hopefully about to remake. There was a golden era of music, in the 60s and the 70s, right? Some of the biggest bands were from Tanzania. The Tanzanian broadcaster, the KBC of Tanzania, would invite the bands in, record the bands, and then play the music.
Allow me to pause you there for a bit, Modoni. So we come to the top of the hour and then take a look at traffic. We have on the hot seat Modoni, the drama queen, MDQ. She's a TED Fellow 2019. We're talking about, musicians and artists in activism and governance. Good morning. It's now 9 o'clock. This is a situation with Kenya's biggest conversation. We'll have her stay on for about another 5 minutes and then we'll let her go.
Spice up your life.
All right, so let's take a look at what's happening within the CBD. Hunu Highway from the GPO roundabout heading to Westlands is bumper to bumper. Also, University Way is hell on earth right now because we have traffic going in both directions because, of course, the graduation is happening. I think gates are already open at the University of Nairobi. So that's quite the mess. On Thika Road also, in and outbound, heading towards Kenyatta University, we have traffic. Jam is crazy today on Jogo Road from the City Stadium to bus station. Is taking an hour at least. So folks, this is what it looks like around the city, and it's owing to events happening within Nairobi and also road construction happening in different parts of the city. So you're gonna have to stay patient. You'll get where you're going eventually, but for now this is what we have and we're gonna have to make the best of it. 0719012 in case 200 in case you see something that we should know about. Let us know.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have Nyeri Thorne, lawyer, political strategist, an insider in the corridors of power, ready to take on any side of the debate with her signature eloquence and grit. C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
It's 2 minutes after 9 o'clock on the hot seat is Mudhoni, the drama queen. MDQ, we're talking about, the role of performing artists. And these are people in the art industry when they come up to speak about leadership and activism. And, well, that's the conversation we've been having in the last 1 hour. I like what you're saying in terms of, this generation picking up the conversation. What CT has said, well, is true. All generations basically have had this conversation going on. Picking up the baton, yes, but how do you actually land this plane? Who's going to land this plane? Is it your generation?
If I can,
and is there any plan?
If I can add a question to this, you see, every generation has had not just its speakers, but it's those who've chronologized it, who've written about it. There was a generation of Frederick Douglass. There was a generation of Frantz Fanon. In your generation, who are the people who have written about this?
They've sung about it.
Who are the people who have written about this? There's a reason why I'm saying this, because remember, songs, a lyricist, in essence, is a poet.
Absolutely.
So they write. Now, when you go into prose, then it becomes a sort of literature that forms a book.
Yes.
So I am not speaking something that my dear friend here cannot respond to adequately.
Cool. So I'm going to respond to both questions, right? So who will land this plane? Us. This is the first thing that I decided myself as Mudhoni. It is on me. I have agency in this matter called my life in Kenya. I do not require somebody in parliament to think on my behalf. I'm quite happy to think for myself. I'm quite happy to consult other people like me and exchange ideas with them. I'm quite happy to produce the solutions for the life that I want to have. This is a thing that Kenyans are going to have to accept. It is you who has the answer. The guy you have elected is meant to go there and tell and make sure that your answer is structuralized. Right? So if my answer, for example, is that we should industrialize, my leader's job is to make sure that that happens to the benefit of the people and not to the benefit of the capitalist. So we are the ones who are going to land it.
Okay.
Who are doing it? Writers, poets. I just told you, for example, they wrote a 3-hour script on the life of Tom Mboya. Who would have ever told me that?
So we're going to see that this is going to unfold. With every great thing, it takes time, of course. And this is not something that we're going to say, oh yeah, fantastic, 2022, and we're going to see some massive change.
But it's happening real quick. It's happening real quick. I think the thing that there's also a sense of urgency. And like I said, because there's a desperation that's tied in. Right?
So you think that people have gotten desperate? People have reached that moment where the pearl must be created. The sand in the oyster it's too much now.
So you see, right before the water hits boiling point, right? So let's assume boiling point is at 100. I think we're at like 89. So I think, it's our choice how this thing hits 100. It's going to hit 100 anyway. It can hit 100 with consensus, with us speaking truth to power and deciding, for example, we are going to own up to all our crap and our systems are going to fix the crap. So you ask me, what does it mean, system? When Kenya admits that Kenya has been part of the big problem of the East African community, own up to that, right? Reconstitute fundamentally the idea of what does this ministry, what is our foreign policy? When we say we are pro-East Africa, what does that actually look like kwa hali na mali? Because East Africans had been trading before the states were formed. So what is our role? How do we make sure that these people have the best chance at being great?
Actually, we had an East African community that worked really well before it was dismantled. And unfortunately, Kenya has been blamed for its disintegration. Whether this is true or not is a subject for debate. But
we definitely lent a hand.
How do you intend to engage those of my generation in your debate? Because the truth of the matter is, a lot of the times, what your generation thinks we have no clue about.
What our generation thinks.
We are
You have
clueless.
clueless.
We
Yeah.
are completely clueless. So how do you get us to be clued on or clued in?
Yeah. So the first thing is that we're finding a few allies, a few people who understand our aspiration and who are willing to ride with us. If I really extrapolate, if you see what's happening in America, the biggest supporters of Bernie Sanders are people in their 20s. They literally have a 50-year gap. But that guy is speaking to the aspiration of the people who are going to inherit that country. So in your generation, the thing that has failed are allies. If the allies exist, they want us to speak to them in the way they want to be spoken to.
We've actually disregarded the youth, to put it bluntly.
That's absolutely true. And when we speak to you, it has to be presented in a way that is well. So we can't say wajinga nyinyi.
It has to be presented in their language.
You have to say it nicely. You have to say, unajua, tunafaa kufanya hivi vizuri. Munafanya vibaya.
So we should start a statement like, okay, sisi ni wajinga kama nyinyi.
Yes.
So,
exactly.
Sisi pia ni wajinga.
Sisi kama wajinga. Then we continue.
Nyinyi kama wajinga wenzetu.
Exactly.
So, yes.
Then we continue.
Thank you very much, Mathoni, for coming in. Of course, you are the organizer as well of the Blankets and Wine event, which is taking place this weekend. Tell us a bit about it.
Yeah, so I began this as my personal agency. You can fix something in music, right? Everything is broken, but maybe you can make a way for people to actually have a good time, for artists to make income, to circulate the economy, to give platform to meet, for audiences to meet with musicians. And the thing has grown and grown. We're in Kenya, we're in Uganda, we have another edition in Rwanda. I feel very proud of the work that we've done. And I think because of this work, I feel extremely empowered that, in fact, with very little knowledge and very much willingness, you can fix something.
Right. Absolutely.
So I encourage you to come through. It's going to be a very good time. We have the edition this coming Sunday at Ngong Racecourse. We have very many great Kenyan performers. I'm very proud to see people like Fena, who've been here in the industry for 10 years, an independent artist. The work of Sauti Soul's hand, now they have given birth to a new generation called Soul Generation. They'll be on stage as well. I run a music incubator for 8 weeks. I'm going to have 3 of those artists from my music incubator on that stage. We also have an artist from Jamaica called Coffee, who's only 19 years old and running the world right now with her music. I feel very, very privileged to watch my generation and the younger millennials taking over. So come through.
Nice. So to make sure that you don't get the bill, make sure that you plug in your sponsor as well.
Absolutely. So I want to thank very much Standard Group for everything that they have done to help us promote the event and to ensure the success.
Asante sana. Thank you very much for coming, and we encourage you to continue with that conversation and the activism. Of course, Society is asking who are the writers, and you've said you are among the writers. Continue writing, continue putting out all your information, and engaging with all generations as well, and ensure that this time round there's an end to this conversation that doesn't go on into the next generation as well. It's 10 minutes past 9 o'clock. This is The Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation, broadcasting from Nairobi to Mombasa to Kisumu, Nakuru, Eldoret, Nyeri, Malindi, also live streaming on www.spicefm.co.ke and on our YouTube channel, Spice FM KE, and Facebook, Spice FM KE. Good morning.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi. Spice up your life. The 80s have never sounded so good.
My favorite songs of the 1980s.
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Sugar and spice. spice and everything nice. Everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself.
The Situation Room is Kenya's biggest
Mornings
conversation.
done
In the
right.
room, we have
94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
And Jerry Thorne.
So on the 25th, which is next week, we have Christmas Day. And then I don't know if you're aware, but the 26th will no longer be Boxing Day. It shall be Utamaduni Day. That means a cultural day.
How do you just get rid of stuff?
This is it. It's very interesting. Of course, Parliament passed a bill allowing for Moi Day, which is the 10th of October, to be changed to Huduma Day, and for the 26th, which is Boxing Day, to be changed to Utamaduni Day. The Utamaduni Day initiative was actually part of the BBI's recommendation. So we can see that things are being put into play in terms of the BBI is crystallizing slowly in front of our eyes. That's quite a big move to actually have legislation come into play to give effect to recommendations from the BBI. But I wanted to discuss this particular day because I was looking at some reactions. Some people were actually associating it to Christmas. Of course, it's very closely tied to Christmas, and felt that Christianity was being attacked, and one went on to say we Muslims are next. So, of course, that's a very radical view. The perspective here is usually government is taking something from you. Boxing Day has nothing to do with Christmas in the Christianity sense, in terms of in Jesus being born. He was born on the 25th, as far as we're concerned in tradition. Boxing Day is actually an old English tradition where the servants would have the days off and they would collect what we call Christmas boxes, or the elite or nobility would collect Christmas boxes and give it to the less fortunate. So it's something completely different. More recently, some traditions will use it as the day where they open their presents, whereas the French open their presents on Christmas Eve, the 24th. So it has different meanings, but across most Commonwealth countries, they do observe Boxing Day as a public or bank holiday. So what I like about this particular bill is we're moving away from the Commonwealth. So it's actually a middle finger, for lack of a better phrase, to the Commonwealth as opposed to Christianity. And, you know, if you fully understand this. And to call it Utamaduni Day, I think it's reclaiming something back from the colonialist. I think there is more to this than meets the eye. Of course, that is my interpretation. My perspective is one which is anti-imperialism. So I'm bound to see that with my confirmation bias. But yes, that's what I see. Utamaduni Day, it's here. It's here to stay. Now, of course, with the ingestion of Western media and the consistent hearing of Boxing Day outside, you wonder whether our children will grow up knowing the 26th of December as Utamaduni Day or Boxing Day, and
or
also
both.
Or both. It'll be interesting to see what sort of
Utamaduni
traditions,
Boxing Day.
what we do on this Utamaduni Day. Hopefully the state can guide us in this in terms of picking up a few cultural idiosyncrasies that we can put together. So perhaps performances at bombers and so on. What do we do on this traditional day? Do we eat traditional food, which we ordinarily do anyway? On Christmas Day, you'll have nyama choma, I guess, chapati, ugali. So what should we do?
Chicken.
Chicken. Is that what you're having, CT?
It must
Chicken.
be had. If it's not
Not
chicken, it's
fish.
not Christmas.
That we have every day.
If it's not
But
chicken,
yeah.
it's not Christmas.
I think I have a few suggestions. That's what my topic is about today, on how we can amplify this cultural day and actually get out of it what the intentions of the drafters of the BBI and subsequently the legislators wanted us to get out of it. Of course, what underpins all of this, or in the backdrop of all of this, is this idea of building a national ethos, of which national holidays act as a coagulant or a catalyst too. They are very much needed, but they must be utilized in the right form. We must see the celebrations as something uniting as opposed to, you know, a day to have off work and go out drinking. So the government has to be very deliberate in the directives it gives when sort of deciding what it is we do on these days. I think the first thing we should do is have all the flags up. This is something I grew up with. I know you say it still happens, but even on bank holidays, I don't see flags in shops, you know, when they're hanging outside shops. So the first thing we need to do is have our flags hanging up. I know there'd been a directive by the president for civil servants to wear Kenyan-made clothing on Fridays. So this is something else he could push, that it's a day we wear clothing, and maybe include the arts, as Modoni was saying. So bring in the fashion industry to design something, have different competitions that fall on that day. The prize giving for anything Kenyan is on that day. Different brands in Kenya fall on that day. And so there's different activities around celebrating Kenyanism. So if it's brands that have been most Kenyan in terms of their considerations, their marketing and so on, the prize is awarded to them on that day. There's a ceremony for that. If it's a fashion industry, there's a competition for coming up with what's most Kenyan. Of course, more intricate than this. I'm just giving sort of a general framework. Yes, so make it a Kenyan day, but I still contend a Boxing Day will still trump over the hearts and minds of Kenyans.
Looking at what Boxing Day was for Kenyans, it was the day after Christmas. Obviously, the whole fanfare of Christmas came and went, and then Boxing Day was a more chilled day where now people would now kind of, have the nyama choma. You wouldn't
clean the sufuria.
Yeah, exactly, and just kind of sit
because
back.
Yesterday you ate the meat.
Now today is to take it
Is that
down
what
a
happens
notch.
in your household?
Kind of was to take it down a notch before then you now prepared for the next celebration that was coming, which was New Year's, right? So then for people, I mean, you gave the history of what Boxing Day was in many other countries. It was for a lot of people was the unboxing, and then it was a day also to give presents to the servants. But here, I don't think that was ever practiced.
It has never been practiced.
It was a chill out day.
It was a chill out day.
So
exactly.
are we now asking people to be active after a day of sort of heavy feasting and making merry and drinking?
I think
is
because
it
of
the
the
wrong
fact,
day?
No, I think because of the fact that it was a chill out day is now seen as a day that then can be
It's
used
an easy
for
day
something
to plug something like
to
this.
plug something else in. You see,
Okay, personally,
Give it a meaning, because we have a day that is actually celebrated without any meaning in Kenya.
a lot of people associate it with Christmas, which is, of course, in this country very steeped in Christianity.
Yeah, it's like the day
so a
after
lot of people
Christmas.
still feel it's part of Christianity.
Actually, the Boxing Day in this country for the longest time was actually celebrated by boxing tournaments.
Really? Get out of here.
There were
true.
boxing
Actually,
tournaments.
Yep.
I'm
that's
actually
something that I heard
explaining
about
to you.
in Nigeria as
Yep.
well. As in
There
boxing
were
actual
boxing
boxing.
tournaments.
Hey,
Yes,
that's
there
the
were.
front door. No.
However, boxing referred to it starts off with presents at Christmas. Presents were normally in a box. That was the day when the boxes were actually opened. You're not feasting as such, so it was a time for you
you're
to
chilled.
You're chilled. You can open the boxes, look at them, determine what you're given, etc., etc. But the word that has been used here is actually a very good one, because when you talk about culture, the word that often comes to word is mila.
Miller.
Yes. Mwacha mila.
Ni mtumwa.
Yes.
Not Roger Miller.
No, not Roger Miller or Miller Davis or Miller Zoyensky.
Or Cecil Miller.
Or Cecil Miller. It's
Not
none of
the
those.
Miller
No,
like
no,
that
no, no.
mills you and grounds.
MILA.
Yes, it's Miller.
Miller. Oh,
Yes.
like tradition.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
that.
these words Miller and utamaduni are actually interchangeable. Yes. But then when it comes to usage, you'll find that utamaduni perhaps it's heavily interpreted as being traditionalist, and that is good for the meaning of what you're saying.
So Miller is there's culture, custom, and tradition.
Now, see, accumulation
Semantics.
of cultural, of customary activities of a people is now what you'd call culture.
Culture.
Yes, when you look at all those activities that are customary habits, when you amalgamate them in a social setting, that's what you call culture.
Becomes your culture.
Yes. Now, the practice of it becomes traditional, so it is a tradition, isn't it?
Yes.
So that's what I'm saying. The word utamaduni, in this case, has been aptly used because it tends to, because of its usage, it covers all that. For instance, if you're talking about the tradition of socialism, the word you'd use is ujamaa wa mila. Okay? That you wouldn't say ujamaa wa utamaduni. You'd say mila. Again, it's just language and its uses. But
Semantics, even. Sorry.
No, absolutely correct. Absolutely correct. The moment you bring in the word synonyms, semantics has to follow close by.
Sure.
So you're absolutely right, yes.
But what are we going to do on this day? Because the first one would be a wasted one, given that it's about bringing us together. If we remember what's underpinning this and the schema behind this particular piece of legislation, it's the BBI. It's about unity, of course, which has emphasized the need for a national ethos. And I can see where this is going. But if we haven't created what we're going to celebrate culturally. Remember, we are fragmented culturally. And there was a time we celebrated and we were curious about different cultures. There's TV that would come on and you'd want to see what other cultures do and so on. Politics, of course, has played its role in making sure that, or in dividing us, the elections as well. So what is it that we're going to be celebrating culturally? If we haven't curated that yet, are we ready for an Utamaduni Day? Are we just going to be exploring other people's cultures and trying to understand things? Are we interested in exploring other people's cultures anymore? Given we've, political platforms have been used to demonize other cultures, we're not interested for one reason or another. What are we going to do on this day that is a national activity, or what is a national celebration of our culture? What brings us together culturally? Because
if you actually want, if you ask me, if you actually want the generations to come to actually understand these things, introduce some of these things in your curriculum. Just like we study electricity, study traditions. Let our students study the variety of Kenyan traditions. So it's part and parcel. When young people study it, it becomes an issue of debate even in their own homes. They will come and ask the parents, so what is our culture? Now imagine a situation where a child comes from parentage who come from two different communities. It'll be a very enriching debate because the child will then learn that my mother says her community was this and this is what they do. So from a very early stage, you will have imbued in our children an understanding of just diversity. Forget this anecdotal talking. We are diverse. Our language is diverse. No. They will even tell
increase
you...
it.
Yes.
Because I believe
enhance it.
It's already being done. And the GHC covers a lot of
this.
Yeah,
it's... No, Chief. It's like saying it's a unit in a study. I am saying making it a subject.
GHC?
I'm saying, no. Make it a subject.
What is GHC?
Geography, history, civics.
Yes. I'm saying make it a subject. If it's that important...
Elevate it.
If we say this issue of tribalism keeps dogging us, how do you then make it a unit of study? And it's that important. Make it a subject. Like maths.
The core.
Yes,
but
let be something that we study.
To the traditions themselves.
It is. So that you study it.
Is part of
and
it.
then make it examinable also.
Would that be a uniting factor? I use this word coagulant to bring us together. Given there's so many differences, and even within those traditions from the different tribes, there's still gaping holes, given the spirituality was demonized and we brought in Christianity. So it's already been meddled with. Do we need to curate an architecture, a whole new culture that takes into account, yes, the past, but actually curate something completely different? Because if these differences themselves haven't brought us together in the past, why should they suddenly,
when
no matter
have
what our
Kenyans
intentions...
actually studied about other people? You learn simply through your own effort. I went to school with so and so. But even that doesn't come out in school, because the unifying factor in school is one thing, it's a school. And the proximity you have will be the classroom that you share with someone. And you make friendships. The issue of those cultural issues hardly ever comes up.
So what is this Utamaduni Day
yet,
about? And
somebody grows up and then it hits you in the face. You're shocked.
I think, City, it actually exists in the school system. That's why when you have the music and drama festivals, that's part of it.
Eric,
hold on.
It's a unit, not
it's
a
part
subject.
Of it. It's part of it. So it goes, throughout your years in school, through primary school and secondary school, you actually get to learn about other cultures. It comes in. So it can be, yes, we can elevate it into a subject and call it examinable subject, where you're asking people, what do the Turkana people, for example, do as a rite of passage? What do they do for, as to commemorate a wedding? How is a wedding in Turkana? How is a wedding in among the Gabra, among the Rendile? Because you already know the tribes in Kenya. Those 42 tribes are
Eric,
taught.
how many years do people study this subject in primary school?
8.
My question is, even with this study, does the knowledge or curiosity and interest in other cultures, does that bind us together? Do we have something we can coalesce around that is Kenyan?
Yes, it does. If you
interest and knowledge
if the
and
curriculum,
understanding.
when you make it a subject, I specifically chose it as a subject because you can then deliberately ensure that you include components in it that would bring about those effects you're discussing. You'll talk about differences. You'll talk about similarities. You'll talk about the current practice of those things. You'll talk about the anomalies that arise from it. Yes. Now, one, you will see there may be differences, but they're not that great. A lot will come out in the discussion about these cultures. What we have when it isn't structured is everybody has their perspective and it can be as wild as they like. And there's nothing to check it. There's nothing to control it. Like we talk about the disparity of our history. It's because It's not that it doesn't exist. It does. But the people who hold sway to the conversation and the loudest ones, some of them I think have even no clue. What they do is talk about what suits them. Now, remember, if somebody has actually learned something or somebody has had an education in many ways is a buffer. It prevents you from being taken advantage of. It
You would have
prevents
thought,
you
but
from being...
from evidence and what we see
It
with the
actually
politicians
does, because the absence of it is
doing
much
to
worse.
us.
Think of the lack of it. How much worse is it?
It's much more expensive, yes, no doubt. But you say learning about other people's cultures make you feel as one. I learned about the, Russian Revolution. I then took an interest in Russian culture. I learned about French culture.
Do you live in Russia?
I didn't feel at all French or Russian.
Do you live in Russia?
But there's people who live in their own enclaves in this country where they're surrounded by one community. If you go to certain villages or certain areas of the country, they're quite isolated. So you could say the same in terms of drawing parallels with what I'm saying and living in Russia.
I think what Siti is saying, you see, when you start learning about it, then certain aspects of that will emerge. The differences.
Okay, my point is,
the
are there enough
similarities.
similarities, and can we pick these similarities? Because before, or rather as things stand, it's Christianity. That seems to bind us. It's a good glue for us. The story of colonialism and us having fought for independence, which is also contested, and it's very contentious. And even then, we don't have all the pieces of information. But those are things that would bind us. If we had a common history, for instance, of which we don't, because regionally, so many different activities were happening at the same time. We haven't had anything documented that binds us together or marries us together as we should. This is basics of statehood. So we have Swahili and we have religion. Other than that, there's very little else we have in common that other countries, that we don't have in common with Uganda or that we don't have in common with Rwanda and so on. There's very little.
What was the unifying factor in Tanzania? It was language.
It was language, yes.
And other social factors were then brought in, but the glue was the language. Okay? Now, think around you. The language that is spoken in Rwanda is the same. Burundi, the same. Okay? Same. No nuances there. Same language.
Parts of DRC.
Yes. But when you talk about the commonality we discuss in Kenya is against a background of supposed and manufactured tribal divisions. Okay? So I am saying you mitigate, you water this down by providing knowledge. Now, the cultures I'm speaking of here are not that ones that are based on ethnic groups. No, it's urban and rural. If you're in an urban setting, you'll have a nice dosage of social and cultural and intercommunity mix. You'll have it. You don't really have much of a choice.
Yeah.
You will have it. In the rural areas, you don't. You belong to one community. You probably study with people from that same community. So a study such as this one becomes more important because you are actually learning things that you ordinarily don't come into contact with. So therein your mind is opened. It's deliberate. And then the government must take deliberate steps as it did in the past and ensure that when it comes to things like employment, this county system thing may interfere with it. But a previous system prior to this one encouraged people to live in other parts of the country. It's not as though this hasn't been worked on or that people who preceded us didn't think this thing through. They did. And they made sure that you were able to actually understand how your fellow citizens of this country functioned, thought, and behaved. They did.
Let's take a look at what's happening on the roads. Of course, we know there are 3 universities, or is it 4 universities that have graduations within the Nairobi metropolitan area. That means traffic. All right. So let's take a look at what's happening there. 0719 012 600. The phone lines will be open right after this break. Good morning.
Everything nice. All right. Okay.
Spice up your life.
And as the minutes tick by, the situation gets a little bit worse. It's gridlocked at Juja Road near Pangani Girls, and it's not moving in any direction. Traffic is at a standstill. Ngara, the CBD, is a no-go zone right now because of the multiple graduations that are happening within the city. So that is not moving in any way, shape or form. Hands on the head for Mombasa Road, because Mombasa Road to town, quite a mess. Nobody is able to get out as quickly as you would hope that they would. So we have a gridlock Mombasa Road, and it's affecting what we see because now we have a lot of people using the bypass and coming out through Langata Road. Going to town is also a problem. Because all roads are leading to town, here we have an issue. Waiyaki Way, yes, we know the graduation is not taking place on Waiyaki Way, but it's a channel to the University of Nairobi, and this is why we have a problem. It's bumper to bumper wherever you look, and it'll phase off soon enough, but for now, this is what we have. If you find an alternate route, we're really hoping we can share. Let us know. 0719 012 600.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
0719-012-600. Let's go to the phone lines. Alan in Nairobi, good morning.
I think CT has a point there. Mm-hmm. I think part of the biggest problem we have in this society is that we have de-emphasized subjects like social sciences, like history and whatever. So that what you have as leaders are just ethical illiterate. If you follow public debate, it's palace. There are no new ideas. We think in absolutes. We argue in circles because we don't have. In this country, we have become generic. You can't see oddballs because we're not taking things seriously. We're not thinking. Kenya we must make this country a thinking society, and before that can happen, we have to re-emphasize the social sciences,
arts and humanities.
People are rushing for MBAs that are being thrown at us like confetti, and so we have become very, very narrow-minded people.
How come you're open-minded?
Sorry?
How come you're open-minded?
Sorry?
How is it that you're open-minded?
No, because I don't know.
Do you read, Alan?
Maybe I'm different, and maybe I read.
Alan, of course you're different, but how much do you read?
No, but look at Parliament.
Yes.
Look at the politicians we have. It's just generic. People think alike. There was a time we used to have guys called bearded sisters. That, guys who would break ranks with conventional wisdom because they have thought and taken positions. That, I believe, is part of the problem of underdevelopment in this country.
That's a good point.
Thank you, Alan.
It's a very good point. I think what I was getting at about utamaduni, I mean, I'm liking the idea. I think the cart has come before the horse, because what we should have done is taken time out to decide what our heritage or what aspects of our heritage, our attitudes and values we want, and create that into one national ideology, and then have offshoots of that in the idea of different activities to reinforce that. But right now we're going into this cultural day. It's going to be up in the air in terms of what we're doing. Different counties are going to attempt to do different things. If we want to achieve what we want to achieve with this particular day, we should have taken
Jerry,
a lot more time.
The first one is not next week because it's got to go into law, right?
Okay.
So we have a year. Basically, what the cabinet has said is
did it get royal assent? Did it get the president's signature?
It was a cabinet. It was basically a cabinet decision. So of course, Eric, it has got to go.
The question.
Royal assent.
Did it get royal assent?
No, it didn't. It got presidential nod. As the chair of the cabinet.
So as of next,
so the next steps now, of course,
would
now
be
is the execution.
To
How
pass
do you
a
bring
bill?
in this policy?
Yes.
Does it go into Parliament? Do we pass a bill? Then how do we actualize this? As
Well,
a
then
Tamaduni
maybe
Day?
these aren't conversations that should come into the public domain, because then you have people who are even against it, because knowing our political leanings.
That's the beauty of debate.
No. You have to be very careful when the debate is to suit an individual's need. So they then politicize something like this. this, and this is exactly what we need for our country, maybe only once we have
Who
actually...
says that's what we need?
This is what we do need in terms of unity.
I was
and
doing well with
national
agreeing with
ethos.
you now. What do you
No,
mean?
no,
This is what we need?
statehood and nation building has been something that has been highlighted by many a scholar that this country lacks. We
And don't
compare
you think that the
ourselves with
nation
Tanzania.
then ought to be involved throughout the process?
I don't think the
don't
nation...
bring it to us at the end.
No, the nation is prone and susceptible to political manipulation through political messaging and individuals. This is the problem. Until something comes to fruition, something that is good for the country.
But why is it a
something
problem,
like
really?
this.
I mean,
It's a problem because I
now
think
that
now there's...
I've woken up from my lull of just agreeing with you, why is it a problem?
So, okay, let's go back to what Eric said. So, when is the first
Tamaduni.
Tamaduni.
Yeah, when is the first one? When the legal instruments come into play?
I would expect so. I would suppose so. So I know what came out yesterday was a cabinet meeting. Cabinet
Yes.
agreed that going forward, let's have Moi Day being called Huduma Day and 26th being Utamaduni Day.
Okay,
Of course,
and a
that has
legal
got to go
instrument
into
has
legal
to be
instruments.
passed
Yes.
in order to give effect to
Yes,
this.
and I
which
think
won't happen
even
'cause
going
they're in
beyond that,
recess.
they're on recess. So
Okay,
next
so
week,
it will
no.
be next year. Now, that is not enough time for us to determine what our national values are, for us
We can
to
have
come
a,
up with a code of
a
conduct.
1 year of
No, no, no.
conversation as a country.
It may
I
not
think
be
that's the
enough.
best.
It's never enough, really. But surely it ought to give us a framework from which we can work.
Okay, you've got a point.
And 12
I
months of
suppose.
a conversation.
Well, I
think that's
hope
good
whoever
enough.
is listening and is working on this initiative.
Oh, they listen all right.
I hope whoever is working on this initiative it realizes that they've got a serious task ahead of them, and they do take into account that we need to build almost a new identity, not new in every facet, but something that we haven't seen before, but is an amalgamation
Something
of who
that
we are.
everybody resonates
Absolutely.
with.
Let's pick another call.
Yes.
Go to Kisumu and hear from Jefferson. Good morning.
Hello, guys. How are you?
Good
Fine,
morning.
thank you, Jefferson.
The other day, I was listening to Kusi Festival in Rwanda. Was it Kusi?
Yes,
Yes.
it was.
And the only profession that will not be overtaken by technology is arts, culture, and sports. So I think we should invest in Utamaduni very well, and we should have county government doing function. Like during Mashujaa Day, we have the president, the army are marching and stuff. So that day is just dancing and plays. So people go out to watch plays. You have different counties holding a public play display in various stadiums or grounds, and people go and watch. From that point, it will pick up.
Fantastic. Yeah.
What do you think?
So the idea of
Yes.
arts,
No, I
cultures,
think your
like
idea
that.
is an excellent one.
We agree. Thank you, Jefferson.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Have a good Christmas, Jefferson.
But remember, these guys got it right. Even by the wording, Utamaduni, they had an alternative.
They got it.
Yes, they could have used the word ufanikishaji,
What's that?
utamaduni.
Ufanikishaji?
Yes.
No, ufanyikishaji. I know what that means.
Why don't you
It
look
means to
it
make
up?
somebody do something.
Ufanikishaji.
carry on.
Ufanikishaji would
What is
come from-
ufanisi? Tell me.
Ufanikishaji would come from ufanisi.
And what
Ufanisi
is
would come
ufanisi?
from something to do with development, my friend.
Aha. And what do you think traditionalism is?
No, that's
If you're talking about moving this particular concept to the point where it's part and parcel of everyday life, what do you think you'll have done?
It's achievement.
You've developed.
Thank you.
It's achievement.
Thank you.
Umefanikiwa.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
have,
you.
actually.
Yes.
I think going forward, there's a team that's, of course, going to be gazetted. Today is Friday, so the gazette notice should be coming out today. There's a 30-member team that's going to be gazetted, that's going to be working. This is committee of experts of 30
They'll give us a
to work
report.
on the BBI, to look at the BBI and bring aspects
30.
of BBI to life. 30. All right.
Okay, how did
Plus
they
the
choose
15
this 30?
Plus the 15. Let's say maybe you are in it. Just wait.
I'm
The
not
Gazette-
in it.
They haven't called you yet. They never call you, man. You read the gazette notice or you
Put
hear it in the
it
news.
this way. Those who are called know they are called even before they are called.
called.
So if you haven't been called, you will not be
will
called.
not be called.
Yes. So
So,
my question, how do they call these people? How do they determine
How do
who
they
should be that
select?
bidder?
How do
they
they
make
select the
it? Yes.
expertise? Of course, it's
For expertise, for what? Sorry, I missed it.
BBI.
Okay.
Committee of experts, team of experts on BBI, of course, being led by a team of lawyers, people who've worked,
See,
of course, in the
Other
political
groupings
parties
that
and all.
already exist in the country, we know it is easy to join. Tanga Tanga. Kueleweka.
This is a task force.
Those
are
also task
political
forces.
splinters of Jubilee.
So what I was saying is this team, of course, is the one that's going to take over the mantle, right? Take up the mantle. And what you are saying, the people who are working on this and what they need to consider, this is what they should be listening to. because they need to consider what exactly is it that we're going to be doing. How do we mark this
They
day?
need to capture.
Do we make it a public holiday where we have speeches at Nyayo Stadium?
No.
Is that what we want to do? If we don't do that and people are at home, then how do we feel that my neighbor is also feeling utamaduni like I am?
Right.
Because we have to have something that is visual.
It's got to be collective, right?
Yes.
It's got to be people coming together to actually do something that then can be seen to be,
Like
unifying
have
factor.
culture-
Yeah.
But what you
Culture
don't want
days
is
on-
something
on
that
the-
is already there, because some of these national days, they do reinforce establishment and power over people,
Yeah.
which is the last thing we want as we come together.
It's all
If
about
we
estates.
remember, yes, there is that element, which is fine. A state does need to reinforce sort of
On those 3 days
might.
that it's given by the
It's
Constitution.
might and show off its military might too. But on this day, first of all, the idea of capturing the essence of who we are as Kenyans, I don't know how they're going to go about that, but I'm sure there's sort of history books and sort of literature literature they can look at, and case studies of countries that have managed to do this successfully. I think Rwanda has been great at statehood in the last 20 years in recent modern history, given what it underwent and what Kagame had to come and do and undo and recreate. Singapore, I think, is also a very good examples of recreating quite recently in the 80s a national value system. And they went through some trial and error, whereby initially they went through a stage in the early 80s whereby they had the moral disintegration of their society that we see today. So there was a lot of drug use, there was high rates of abortion, and then they introduced religion, and they were really pushing this religion. And then the government actually realized, no, this is not working because of this radicalization with religion, which we're seeing aspects of now as well with televangelism or evangelism and some of the prosperity teaching that we're seeing. So they took that back, and they actually came up with a national ideology. So it's people who sat down, experts, anthropologists, historians, psychologists, sociologists, and so on, and came up with a framework. Now that framework could be filled in, I suppose, with conversations from elsewhere, but they came up with a framework. And this is what I'm hoping our guys, whether it's the BBI task force or whatever it's reduced to in order to implement the BBI, because at the moment, I think with this second round, we're still at the stage of deliberations and more conversations. So once we get past that and we look for this, for their initiatives to crystallize and manifest into something, I really hope that they go into a lot of detail, because this is one chance. We missed it previously. We missed it, I think, at independence for state building and nationhood. We got caught up more in building the economy. I think Tanzania leaned more on the social pillar and building the state. So this is yet another opportunity.
We actually missed it twice.
Yeah, that's what,
the second liberation.
We missed it twice.
Let's hear from George, who's calling from Kisumu. Good morning, George.
Good morning, guys.
Good morning.
Okay, I only have you guys wanted a solution for how.
Oh, crap.
Please.
No, he'll come back, I'm sure.
Please do call back. I love solutions.
This morning we were talking about solutions. And I talk about solutions. What did I just say?
We don't know what that was supposed to be, but okay.
Mother tongue interference.
Got it.
Solutions. Yes, exactly. The emphasis on the son. Solutions that pertain to not just urgent matters, but things that could become a crisis if not managed. The issue of tribalism in this country, unfortunately, tends in that direction. But what we're discussing was floods. And we have a perfect example of a country that has actually managed that situation to a T.
To a T, right.
They know they have been warned. People have been moved.
They took action.
The government has put up people in hostels or places far away from there where they are paying for.
Hold. George is back.
George is back.
Yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I got a little cut off, but I only wanted to just say one thing.
Yes.
About Utamaduni Day, and you guys got a very good suggestion. I say, if the president can put the flag in his hand, that's what brings everybody together. Look at the other countries, United States, they all just put their flag. So why don't we just put our flag and call it Utamaduni Day? There we go. Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas, George.
Thank you.
Okay, now the problem with that suggestion is some people want to plant the flag in their hair.
This is the problem.
That's fine.
You think it's fine?
Everybody wear a flag
wherever your
day.
flag is.
Wear it.
Oh.
Wear it. Wear it.
That's where we're going with
I
it.
have
is it?
mine on the wrist.
Okay.
That's actually brought on more problems and solutions, apparently, according
to Twips.
The wristband. Yeah.
According to Twips. Well, it's just
because it's got its political connotations in terms of your leanings. It was worn by the Jubilee Party leader, and people followed suit.
What's wrong with that?
It moved on. It actually just became
the Jubilee Party leader also happens to be the president of Kenya.
And guess what? He's Kenyan too. Surprise!
Yes, oddly enough, he is Kenyan. Yes,
coincidentally.
Yes, just as a matter of
Yeah.
I was thinking about how about because people will be at home, having cultural events at local neighborhoods. So the way we have
Bakumi style.
You are aware that eating is a cultural event.
That's one. Yes.
Feasting.
I know, for example, there are people who organize around this time those boxing tournament and all, and then there's also eating tournament and also cultural
eating tournament.
Yes,
get out of here. What's it's an eating competition?
A full loaf of bread, eat it within 60 seconds or something.
What community? With a Fanta or just cuff?
Cuff.
I think I choke you.
and yet they are winners.
I meant some.
So I was talking about, so what I was saying is have those cultural events. So it brings around about people within their localities. They come out together and they're celebrating certain aspects of their culture. Of course, then the government has percolated a way in which one of the overriding themes is coming out in those events, which is binding us as a country. So of course, if you are in Nyeri, you're going to celebrate a lot of what the culture of the Kikuyu will be, but then there'll be something that is a common strand
throughout the country.
The Mijikenda, wherever they are, the Bajun, the Asians, the Luo, the Turkana. You celebrate your culture, but then there's also something that is Kenyan.
I do still see the value of having such entrenched at the education level. When you're teaching this, I think of a lot of things I know about Nigerian history, for example, and they were taught in school. When you talk about the New Yam Festival, or when you talk about the kingdoms of Usman Dan Fodio and the kingdom of Amadou Bello, those are things that we were taught in school, and we were able to discuss them so that later on in life, when I visit a museum in Zaria and I know that, or I visit the kingdoms of Kano in the north, where I was born but was not where I was from, then it resonated with me because it's something that I learned in school. So I see the value and I see the benefit of such things being taught in school. Of course, that leaves out a great chunk of people going forward who are not going to go back to school to learn these things.
Media.
But exactly. And now that's how the media could step in to make sure that those who are not going to go back to school to learn these things could actually come together in terms of the knowledge that they get. And of course, once you're fed with knowledge, you begin to share experiences, you begin to ask questions, and these things then come out to the fore by virtue of that. So I think education is vital in doing something like this. I think it's one of the core ways to actually get this message across.
At 10 minutes to 10 o'clock, we were asking the question this morning, how do we celebrate Utamaduni Day? Now that the cabinet has said yes, it's a good idea. We may be going to start having Utamaduni Days on the 26th of December every year. How do we celebrate it, and how do we make it a complete national Utamaduni Day? 0719 012 600.
96.1 Spice FM. Kisi. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
You know what is interesting is when we go beyond the traditional solution-solving problem by talk and move to the next level of actually having the will to do things, it is amazing. I mean, something which seems maybe not as pertinent as arrests of governors, something as simple as people leaving office when they're ministers, it may not seem like much. But if that will can actually be pushed to its logical conclusion and then transferred, we leave the prosecutions and we transfer it to ensuring that something like this Utamaduni Day actually becomes a reality. Oddly enough, it can. If you look at the vigor and the energy with which people pursue personal interests in Parliament, that is now both the Senate and the National Assembly, you can see the energy is there, the will is there, the focus is there. It's just taking that same energy package and transferring it to something that can actually make that real change. It can.
It can.
Yes.
I think the linguistic diversity that we see in Kenya is actually a hindrance. If we can find a way, and this is where Tanzania had it right, because they made Swahili the national language. We've got English as well, and that also creates a class divide. We were talking about earlier that the leanings of your tongue when you speak English can actually sort of give people a pretty good indication as to your background in terms of perhaps education and so on. Now, if we were all speaking Swahili, and that was what was encouraged, and your mother tongue was second, then I think language precedes thought as well. So even culturally, you would start towards cultural leanings that are Kenyan. So if you use idioms, for instance, or if you use, whether it's anecdotes or metaphors and so on, they will be united. And these are the things that control our thoughts. And if we could have, I don't want it to be homogenous in that we're all thinking the same, but it could start to build statehood. So I think language is very important. I think most people still rely heavily to communicate primarily in their mother tongue. Of course, not in the urban areas particularly, but in rural settings, you'll find this is the same. Another element we need to look at, if you look at countries that have managed to be successful at state building, is a shared sacrifice. And this is where we failed, I think, at independence. And from there, to document this properly and reinforce it. When people feel they have a shared history, a shared sense of sacrifice, so whether it's been a war, for instance, the Second World War in Europe brought Europe together, of course, with the League of Nations, the founding or coming up with the League of Nations and subsequently what became the UN, and then that led to other agreements which led to the EU and so on, because they had a shared sacrifice, a shared history. They had gone through a war, 99 million people had been killed. Rwanda, of course, is also doing very well in terms of state building because they've gone through suffering together. So I'm not saying we have to undergo bloodshed or anything new, but there is a shared history in terms of our fight for independence. If this could be documented and we are reminded that we are heroes and we see the suffering that our fellow Kenyans went through, then believe you me, that idea of an external enemy already brings us together. But the shared history also helps. If you look at the states and some of the things they celebrate from the Civil War, 4th of July, and even now the idea of terrorism really brings people together. It's an external enemy, which we don't necessarily have. There is the threat of terrorism in Kenya, but we don't have it as a predominant discourse in our public sphere, as let's say the Americans do. But these are some of the things we need to consider. And this is why I say we failed at independence. We could have been telling a glorifying story of victory, and this is something everybody could have held on to. We don't have that.
There's something that I'd like to go back to. Sorry.
Sorry.
Yes, you saw it? Okay.
Be nice if Brian bought some water, but that'll happen.
You said that language precedes thought, you said?
I think it also sort of, I mean, the two are interchangeable. Thought can precede language, but language does determine thought.
Thought definitely precedes language. That's what I'm trying to say.
In what sense? What I was saying with language, if you think about it, and I gave the example, if you come up with an idiom, for instance, or you come up with a metaphor, the thought process and the situation that you will be thinking of, the context of it will be similar to one another. So if I say it's raining cats and dogs, certain people can relate to that. And I don't know about the sort of history of that particular saying, but I think in this way, language does guide thought. Also, it's in limitations of certain words within certain languages. But yes, I do think language can guide thought and therefore culture to a certain extent.
It does, but what I'm putting across is this. Remember, language is something that is learned, it's taught, it's cognitive. When you're talking about thought, it's sensory. It's a sensory motor activity. Okay? Now, it precedes language in this sense. It is actioned, and then what we call language is now the manifestation of that particular thought. Now, when thought matures, indeed, it can then influence thought. Because of what
when language matures.
Yes, when it matures, what it does, it's a communication tool. Thought, unless put into language, or it is in a form that can be consumed publicly, like in writing, one will not know what it is. Yes, and language normally comes after that. That's what I'm trying to say. So in a sense, you're right. It contributes in that once there is language that is actually communicating thought, if you give it time, then it will also influence thought.
Absolutely, and it will homogenize it, because if we're all using the same language, our reference points will be the same. I keep using this idea of metaphors, and metaphors do play a big part in our understanding of things. So if the similes we're using, if the examples we're using are quite similar, it does unite. Although you don't want the people who are all thinking the same. We had somebody said that we're all generic.
Right.
But allow me to throw the cat among the pigeons here. This sort of disunity that we speak of has often been referred to as diversity. And I believe it is. But when you magnify the differences and completely negate or don't speak enough of the similarities and the good that this diversity brings, then it appears that we have a colossal problem that is beyond solution. And in my opinion, it is not true. Why it is not true is, look at any workplace in this country. Indeed, there may be representation from one community that is more than others, but if you look carefully, you will find that this can be replicated in other places. Now, this brings about the issue and the debate of education, who got there first, who did what first, a different debate altogether. But you cannot say that people are totally underrepresented. That would be a fallacy. Sorry?
No, go on.
No.
No, finish.
Okay, let me come in.
Yes,
so
please.
we are coming to the end of the show. And we're going to take a break, of course, for Christmas. We'll be taking a break for next week. The show, of course, will come back on the 30th of December. We will be back here. But the whole of next week.
30th of December?
Yes. And, of course, the whole of next week we'll be having uninterrupted music and a lot of Christmas wishes from us. So let's just go round. Your Christmas message.
Message? I thought I gave it the other time.
No.
You repeat it.
Repeat it. A nice one now.
A nice Christmas message. Wapendwa, msherekee vyema kwa usalama na kwa rehema za Mwenyezi Mungu. Tukutane tarehe 30 mwezi huu.
Majaliwa
za Mwenyezi Mungu.
Kabisa.
Yes.
Merry Christmas kila mtu.
Perfect.
Muenjoy sana. Na mfanye vitu za mila na familia. Alafu
mkule taki.
Mkumbuke kutakuwa na utamaduni day. And yeah, Merry Christmas everybody, really. That's it.
Merry Christmas, folks. Be careful as you travel, and